Welcome, everybody. We may get started, given that it is now 5:30. If you'd like to stand for the government prayer and acknowledgement of country. Acknowledge the tradition.
Mighty God, we are bless this council, occasion of change, direct and prosperations.
We gratefully acknowledge the men and women of the Navy, Army and Air Force who made the supreme sacrifice for the preservation of Australians' freedom and democracy. We also proclaim our gratitude to those who returned.
So welcome everybody. We've got a large gallery this evening, and so I'd like to welcome the gallery and also those that are listening at home. We have the Friends of Hindmarsh River Estuary here tonight, so welcome to you with your deputation later on, and we also have a number of people from the Victor Harbor Croquet Club, so welcome to you as well. We have the Fleurieu Sun and the Times in the press gallery, and so welcome to you. Can I just remind elected members that if you do want to call divisions, and I encourage you to call divisions on issues that you think the community would like to know how you voted on, can you do that when you raise your hand, or do it very quickly afterwards? I'll also leave a little space and time, because once we get on to the next item of business, I will be continuing with that item of business. So just a reminder to you then. And we will start. We do have an item adjourned and lying on the table, which is item 4, and it's the proposal in relation to the Avenue of Honour on Pages Road. The recommendation is that Council receive and note the report and the proposal. That's the first recommendation. That was moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Litterly. But because we have because that has been lying on the table for a while, I will let the mover and seconder speak again to it if they want to. So do we want to continue the debate with that, and it's receiving and noting the adjourned item? Councillor Henderson?
I'm happy not to speak again. I've said what I needed to the last time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp?
Just a question, please, Mayor Jenkins. Do we have to move a motion to bring it off the table before we can just...
It's adjourned. It's not on the table. If there's no further discussion about that first recommendation, I'll put it to the floor. That is that new item. I beg your pardon, it's been pointed out to me that that is not the recommendation that was before you. It's been written in a way that looks as though the current motion is receiving and noting the adjourned item. So I do need a mover and seconder to receive and note the adjourned item. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Schofield. Thank you. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. So the current motion before Council now is recommendation 2, which was moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Litterly. As I said previously, I'll let you both speak to that again if you would like to. And the motion towards Council is that Council support and approve the establishment of an avenue of honour through the planting of trees of both sides of the verges on Pages Road. Would someone like to, well, you've got that moved and seconded. Would someone like to continue the debate on that? Thank you, councillor Robertson.
Yes, Mayor, I just have, I've just one concern. We're paying a lot for these trees, but the bigger concern is that the council is going to maintain the trees from after 2 years, 2 years after the planting. So the task group's going to look after the trees for the first 2 years. I would prefer to see that we change that to 4 years. I think that in essence, I don't see that why the council should be, once the trees get to 4 years of age, they're very likely to survive. And also if there's any of them die, they'd be replaced by presumably the task group. But the first 2 years I think are still risky for a young tree's growth, and I'd like to see that. I'd move to see that changed to 4 years.
Might ask Kathy to respond to that for you, councillor Robertson.
Through the Mayor, thank you, councillor Robertson. Yes, that could be changed to 4 years if the chamber so desires. That 2 year was what the proponent suggested, but if you'd like to change it to 4, happy with that.
Yeah.
If the mover and seconder want to change it to 4, otherwise you might want to put through an amendment to change that to 4.
Well, the mover and seconder are happy with 4.
Councillor Henderson and Littley? You happy with 4 years, councillor Henderson? Councillor Littley? I'll just see how that's going to be included in the recommendation, given that the time wasn't specifically addressed in the recommendation. Kathy Hayter, how would you propose that get put into the recommendation?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, potentially from page 7 where we've got there maintain trees from 2 years after planting, we could just add that to the end of the resolution just to say and maintain the trees from 4 years after planting.
And to maintain the trees up to 4 years after planting? For 4 years after planting? If the mover and seconder are happy with that? Is there any further discussion in relation to that motion? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I just want to declare a perceived conflict of interest as I'm a member of the Victor Harbour RSL sub-branch, even though this is not directly involved the RSL, but I will stay in the chamber and vote on the matter.
Thank you. If there's no further commentary, I'll ask Councillor Henderson to close the debate as the mover. Do you want to close the debate? You don't need to. All right, I'll put it to the council. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The second recommendation there is that council endorse the increase in 2022-23 budget for the tree planting program of $2,800 to purchase and plant the trees. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Littley. And seconded by? Thank you, councillor Robertson. Would you like to speak to that, councillor Littley? Councillor Robertson? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. A question to the Finance Department. With the increase of budget this year, increase of CPI, etc., could we not absorb this small amount of money into the current 22-23 budget? We are increasing it a fair bit.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I know you directed to Kelly, but probably for me, it's probably we can absorb anything, but the increasing pressure on capacity on the budget to look after our open spaces keeps growing. This will be a real cost to purchase the trees and then apply. The trees obviously cost us money, and then to actually plant the trees. So there's some real cost there.
there any further questions or anything further anyone wants to say? Councillor Littley, do you want to close the debate? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 5 are minutes of the previous meeting of the 23rd of May, and the recommendation is that they be confirmed as true and accurate. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Hales, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to those minutes? Does anybody want to speak to the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? It's carried, thank you. Minutes of the special meeting on the 30th of May. Would someone like to move that they are confirmed as true and accurate? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconded by Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak? Does anybody want to speak to them? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. I'm really pleased to be able to say we've got 2 deputations tonight. The first one is from Friends of Hindmarsh River Estuary. Mark Richards, would you and your team like to come forward? Please take a seat, and if you pop your microphone on, perhaps David or Tim might be able to show you how to do that if you're having trouble. Yep, that's it. You do have 10 minutes, but after 8 minutes, we will give you a little buzz, and then you might want to wind it up so that we have some time for questions, because the 10 minutes needs to include questions. So thank you very much for coming, and please go ahead.
Thank you. This is Diane Collins. I'm Anne Wright. Thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to give this presentation, asking for your support, funding our request. We're a diverse group with a very big, diverse range of experiences behind us, all volunteering to assist Hindmarsh River Estuary in various ways. We have a fantastic handout for our new members, even a short video, which in many ways shows us how that we have a hands-on experience. You would have received both of those earlier. When we started a year ago, we had several truckloads of weeds removed from the area. This actually was a very good thing and a very learning experience for us as a group. We thought, hang on, we're not just more, we're more than pulling weeds, we're more than planting. We like sustainability. Hang on, go back there. You did it too quick. Sustainability is a holistic approach that considers ecological, social and economic dimensions, recognising that all must be considered together to find lasting prosperity. And we actually do try to coordinate the 3: environmental, economy and society.
For some members, can you hear me? For some members, there was a desire to conserve or improve part of our local environment for the benefit of our children and grandchildren, to show them that we've recognised our climate is changing and that we want to be part of the solution. Some of us undertook some research of the current status of the local environment, which included some deep diving into the Healthy Environments Report 2018. We were shocked to realise that 83% of our native vegetation has been lost. This was a bit of a defining moment for our group. We ask ourselves, what can we do as a group? So we looked at some more of your prepared documents and policies and realised some of the things we valued were articulated in your documents and the NRM Hindmarsh River Estuary Action Plan. We want to be consistent and aligned with the council and community values, which all talk about the value we put on our local native environment, the value of retaining and restoring the natural assets. City of Victor Harbor Community Plan 2030 talks about planting more trees, which is part of what we hope to achieve by collecting local Indigenous seeds, propagating them and working with Lee and Andrew to plant them.
Our focus is the well-being of the much-loved Hindmarsh River Estuary, recognising the importance of the river and the precinct as valuable ecosystems and habitats, and as a place the community can interact and enjoy. Our approach by diversity, conservation concepts to control emerging threats, invasive feral plants and animals, maintaining an intact, viable landscapes, reversing the decline and reinstating ecosystems and habitats, and recovering threatened species. On the other side, you can actually see the Hindmarsh River. That's 3 kilometres of walking trails, bike trail, of a great diversity from one reserve to another. And we're trying very hard to link all the reserves together in a way that's cohesive with our concepts. Successfully implementing an ambitious 3 to 5 year plan. This really was a pivotal moment in our group. We have key ideas in there that refers to members. What do we do with members? We develop their skills and we encourage taking care of oneself as well as others. Planning, data recording, discussions, activities. What do we do and when do we do it? Projects, long and short, on the ground, or seeds and seedling propagation. Community, communications, business and schools. On the moment in the river corridor, we're targeting areas that we are going to be doing wilding, and we're putting in natural grasses, native grasses in that area. We have these areas isolated at the moment, and we're targeting for the seeds this year, so we're planning on a really large propagation for this year and large seeding out, planting next year. We're monitoring and surveying the river's health, birds, fish and invertebrate. I'll get that out. And engaging with schools and businesses. And the last one, engaging with schools and businesses, is very big for us. It's a new thought for our process, so we're looking forward to how we can do that.
It was interesting to read that there's 1,575 recorded native flora and fauna species in the City of Victor Harbor Council. 221 of those are threatened in the Adelaide Mount Lofty Ranges area. This was one of the focuses of our group to try to improve the ecosystems for the threatened and vulnerable species, and to restore and improve the habitat and biodiversity of the area. So we are planning on planting a range of diverse Indigenous trees and grasses to provide food and shelter for the birds, insects and other fauna who live there. And I have to say, Lee Jennings has been invaluable with the information and time that she's given us so far.
This one is a real pet love for me, the mental and physical health and well-being of community and members. That's my scooter on the right. I've got a mobility scooter, I've got a bad knee, I can't walk very far, but being a part of this group has increased my physical health as well as my mental health by being out every day and talking to people. I see a large cross-section of the public. I talk to them. People that just walk their dogs now say hello, stop and have a yarn. There is so much happening on that walkway. It's amazing. You cannot go from 0 to the 3Ks without seeing 4 or 5 people at any one time. It's quite diverse.
So this,
So you have 2 minutes left.
okay,
Thank you.
this is probably the most important part. So unfortunately, on the map, you can't see the areas shaded in red, but they,
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
yeah, thank you. That's the area that we're proposing to have some funding to do the weed control. So in this area, there's lots of large woody weeds and the terrain is inaccessible to us, mainly because of quite steep banks. Andrew Comas has identified the area that contains valuable remnant vegetation. We've removed a lot of the accessible weeds in the area, but unless the larger weeds are removed, they'll continue to be an ongoing weed infestation in the river areas by seed dispersal. So Andrew Comas prepared a quote, which would be attended by contractors overseen by Andrew, and we made an application for a grassroots grant to Landscapes Victoria for $14,000, which was the quote. They've indicated that 50% would be granted. So we're here and we would be delighted if City of Victor Harbor could approve the allocation of the other $7,000 to allow the designated works to be fully undertaken. So on behalf of our Friends of High Marsh River Estuary Group, we thank you for your time and hope you can favourably respond to the request for the grant. We value our support from Andrew and Lee thus far. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Diane and Anne. We've got time probably for 1 or 2 very quick questions. Does anybody have any questions for the 2 women? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Diane, for this presentation. I understand what you presented tonight was along the river corridor and the estuary of the Mouth in that area. Are you looking at moving towards through the sand dunes along the railway line towards the Alexandria Council boundary as part of your project in the future?
That's an area that's currently being managed by Coast Care, but we are actually joining with Coast Care and Corey Jackson. We've been invited to go and help them replant Benefics grasses along that. That would be our involvement at this stage.
Just a quick follow-up question, the costings of the seedlings and small trees and the propagation, have you costed them out yet?
Negligible, because we're collecting our own seeds.
Okay.
The council is providing the necessary potting mix that we need, and the pots, well, we're recycling them as an ongoing per yearly thing.
Thank you.
It's very negligible.
Yeah, we hope that to be able to grow most of them, but it's our first year and we haven't had huge success. We've had some success.
Can I just ask again, the $7,000 that you'd like us to match that the landscape boards are giving you, what specifically are you using that for? Is that the woody?
Going toward the contractors to take out the larger trees that we can't get to, the olives and what was the other one?
The ash, the
Yes,
ash trees?
yes.
Ash.
Yep.
I can hear it in the background.
And
Thank you.
boxthorns. But
Boxthorns, definitely.
It would probably involve some safety gear, I think,
Okay.
because they would have to descend banks.
So it's
and
for the
that's probably-
contractors to be able to get rid
Yeah.
of all of
Correct,
that?
yes. It's not for us to go down there. The bank is way too slippery.
Yeah.
And the whole area is way too hard for us to get into. The contractors would use the proper equipment to not only get into the area, but then to actually attack them.
Right.
It's quite difficult to attack a boxthorn. And
Okay.
it's not that difficult to do an olive, but you've got to get to it.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I think that's made it quite clear, and we are having budget deliberations. So if somebody doesn't bring it up, I'll certainly bring it up at our next budget deliberation workshop and see whether or not there's anything that we can do
Thank you very
to
much
assist
for your
you.
time.
But thank you very much for
Thank
the
you
work
so
that you do
much.
there.
Thank you.
It's really important. And thank you, Mark, very much for your input into that as well.
Could I just quickly ask a question, sorry, of the administration? In relation to that
Yep.
area
Yes.
of land?
Yep.
Is that council owned land? Is that the new section of land that we've recently acquired?
We'll have to take that on notice, Tim. Unless, Mark, can you answer that? Okay. We'll follow that up as well. Thank you. We do have another deputation, and this is from the Croquet Club. Have we got somebody from the Croquet Club talking to us? Lovely. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of your members for coming tonight as well and supporting you. As I said to the Friends of Hindmarsh River Estuary, you have 8 minutes to speak and then 2 minutes for any questions afterwards. I'll let you know when your 8 minutes is up to wind you up. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and visitors. My name is Shirley Howlett and I'm from the Victor Harbor Croquet Club. While I'm speaking, there'll be some photos of our buildings and lawns just for you to look at if you get sick of listening to me, but there won't be anything written up there. I just want to tell you a lot about our game, croquet, and also our club, because croquet, although it's a minor sport, it's played by many people across the world, regular international events, national events, and of course, just city-based events that we have in Victor Harbor. There are a number of different versions of the game. At our club, we concentrate on playing 2 in the main. One, association croquet, which is the traditional sport that you may have heard of, and golf croquet, which is a newer and probably easier to learn game. Both of them are played from a social level, but also to a high class standard at our club. We're very proud of the fact that we have had almost continual representatives in the South Australian state team in both association and golf croquet for many years, starting back in the 60s when Mrs. Gwen Rumbelow was a very well known and respected international player. So at that time I was at high school in Victor Harbor, and of course I hadn't heard anything at all about croquet, and now I wish I'd been wise enough to appreciate it. Croquet is a great game. It's not just a game for little old men and little old ladies and they just go down there and they have a little natter and they hit a little ball through a hoop. Yes, we do hit balls through hoops, but you can do that very skillfully, or you can do it very joyfully, just having a good time and having a social outing. But the actual skills of the game, both versions of the game, are really, you really need to get stuck in and practice and learn how to do things. One of the main reasons why our club has become well known and why we have good state representation is surely the standard of our lawns. We have 3 natural turf lawns at our club, and the majority of our money goes in maintaining them to a world-class standard. We like to think they're the best in South Australia at least, and they'd probably give anywhere in Australia a good go. It costs us roughly $20,000 a year to maintain those lawns, and we do that without any help. We raise the money and we have many volunteers who put in a lot of hours. We pay a grounds person to give us the expert advice that we need, of course. Each year we have 2 tournaments, one for golf croquet, one for association croquet. And these are filled almost immediately as soon as they're advertised, because people want to come here. They enjoy coming to Victor Harbor because it's a great place to visit, and they enjoy playing on excellent lawn. And every tournament you will hear the chorus of, "Oh, aren't you lucky to play where you play? Aren't your lawns fabulous? And what about the location? You can hear the sea, and it's just a fabulous place to play croquet." And we all agree and say, yes, we're very lucky. One of the things we would certainly be against, if ever it was mooted that we should move, would be artificial turf. Artificial turf is a big no-no in our sport, and that would immediately reduce our club to an insignificant thing, because no top player will come and play on artificial turf. The joys of playing on lawn are sometimes not many, but a flat lawn is great, and it does bring into account the little vagaries of lawns and things, adds to the complexity of play. Our club will be 100 years old next year, and we're very proud of that fact, and we're proud of the fact that we're economically viable. For many years, many volunteers have put in their time and effort to make sure we manage our money and to make sure we can exist with a minimum of help from anyone. The council, of course, owns the building and the land, and our last lease was only renewed for 5 years. It ends in 2025, and that makes us understandably a little bit nervous. We hope it will be renewed because, as I've said, the location is fantastic. Over the years that we've had our clubhouse there, we've created and maintained gardens. We've carried out a huge range of improvements to the clubhouse. Over the years, it's been rewired. We've installed ceiling fans. We've improved toilet facilities. We've built sheds to store the equipment. And I would imagine that our Secretary Beth and our life member Cynthia could detail every improvement made by the club over many years. And they would also be able to tell you the times they've harassed the council into doing stuff as well. But I think those 2 people would probably know more than all of you combined about what the council has or hasn't done for our club. We like to keep our annual subscriptions low so that the sport is available to everyone. And once again, to do this, we require a lot of fundraising and a lot of volunteering. We run Bunnings sausage sizzles now. They've been a great innovation. But, you know, the normal things, soup nights and stuff like that, that often it's just your club members once again giving back. But that enables us to keep the annual subscriptions low. And we've worked really hard to get sponsorship, and on the back fence now between us and the yacht club, you will notice there are signs from sponsors who have paid to put a sign there to advertise themselves, and we greatly appreciate the support of local businesses. During our tournaments, we have many other smaller businesses that come on board and provide vouchers and other things. And people who come to our tournament spend money when they're down here, and they love getting a voucher for a coffee or whatever, and it encourages them to go out and spend more in our community. And recently, we've featured in a National Pharmacies advertisement on TV, Channel 7. Check it out. You have to be quick, but the clubhouse and a few actors playing croquet players and a couple of club members in the background. But they approached us to do that, and that's as a result of National Pharmacies having been sponsors of our tournament for quite some time. In our 2 tournaments, we have major sponsors, The Optometry and Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, who give a considerable amount of money so that our prize money comes from them. So we appreciate the support of local businesses.
Shirley, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've just about finished, so that's fortuitous. We want to keep improving our buildings. The clubhouse is not in good condition, but we're happy to spend money if we are able to, so that it will maintain its life. I want to stress that many of our new members come from people who walk along the foreshore with or without their dogs. So many times people will eventually come in and say, I've been walking past here for 5 years and I've just decided to come in and see about it, and then they join. Well, I hope now you know more about croquet. Even though it's a minor sport, it's a game of tactics, skill. It's gentle but continual exercise of both your body and your mind. And I think that the city of Victor Harbor, where seniors make up a large percentage of the population, should really be showcasing croquet as the face of active ageing, because that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley. We've got time for perhaps 1 or 2 quick questions. Does anybody have a question? Shirley, maybe while you're thinking about it. Oh, Tim, you have?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Just so I can clarify, ultimately your ambition is to stay where you are?
Absolutely, because like I said, it's a beautiful location, and I guess the drawback is the state of the building and new regulations involving offshore. But yes, we would like to stay where we are.
Okay. But you would consider if an opportunity came to relocate, as long as you had some, turf fields and facilities met your needs?
The thought of moving, say, to the sporting precinct that's being proposed, it's fraught with a few difficulties because of the amount of space we need. We would ideally like, again, to have 4 lawns. We used to have 4, but the decline a few years ago meant that one became part of the yacht club. But now our club can't get much bigger before we would definitely need a 4th lawn. So I guess that could be an advantage of moving, so long as it was natural turf. But we really like our central location because of the passers-by, because it's not a sport that receives much publicity, and if it's in a more secluded portion of Victor Harbor, it wouldn't have passing traffic to the extent that it does down there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shirley, can I just ask, how many club members have you got in your club?
We're around about 60.
About 60.
Yeah, naturally, because membership is from older people. Every year there's a few who drop off the perch, so to speak. But we've been increasing steadily. We had a good response to the Flurio ageing thing the other year. We got about 5 new members out of that. And then it's been fairly continual since then, just, the odd 2 or 3 here, yeah.
Thank you. And sorry, Councillor Robertson, I saw your hand go up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shirley, for that presentation. Learned a lot tonight. I had a pretty good idea of what you did, but the extent of it, I learned tonight. Well done, 100 years next year, and that you are able to keep up those those turf lawns and your membership and activities. Yeah, well done.
A quick question, Councillor Littley.
It will be quick. It might be a bit naive of me, but could you coexist with another sport club, such as a bowling club, in a situation whereby to gain your 4th court if needed, there could be some cross use of that? And it might be very naive of me to think that's possible, but
it's not really possible because we put hoops into the ground, and because most bowls clubs now have artificial turf. But yeah, the main problem is bowls clubs tend not to like people whacking in hoops for croquet. Yeah. And another thing that I didn't mention, whenever we have our tournaments, this is another problem with perhaps Sporting Precinct. We need a clubhouse because, and we play, didn't mention this as well, we play virtually 5 or 6 days a week, regular club competitions. And when it comes tournament time, we need a clubhouse where we can provide lunches and evening meals and stuff. So it would be difficult to share that facility with other sports.
Thank you very much, Shirley. That was very interesting, and thank you very much to everybody else that came along to listen.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mayor Jenkins. Before we move on, I'd like to move a motion in relation to the $7,000 for the Friends of the Hindmarsh River Estuary. Would I be able to do that now? While we have the members here?
We could do that now, if members are happy to, if you're happy to move a motion now.
Yes, no, I'd be
Yes.
very happy to move a motion
Yep, all right.
somewhere along the lines that the council grant the Friends of the Hindmarsh River Estuary $7,000 subject to their successful grant application from, and I didn't write down who it was from, Southern Hills, someone I think.
Can I just
Yes, go
ask
forward.
in relation to that, Kelly, whether or not there is that money in the budget to do that for this year's budget?
Through the Mayor, I presume you'd be wanting to include it in the 22-23 budget. We would need to add that in.
Yeah, I'd happy to put it in the 20, in next year's budget.
All right.
So yeah, I'd like to move that and I'd
right.
like to speak to it.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Glasbrook?
Yeah, well, only to state the obvious. You know, obviously this is a new group and a fantastic group, and I commend them for getting out there and applying for this grant. You know, it's something that council didn't have on their radar. It's council land apparently, so you know, I think it's fantastic that they've done it, and I think we should support them. So.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Do you want to speak to that?
I'd just like to thank the group for the work that you've been doing, and of course as a Hills and Fureo board member, I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's areas of both rivers that we really need to conserve for the future generations, so thank you very much.
Does anybody else want to speak to that? Councillor Littley?
Yeah, I'm in full support of this. The value of the volunteer work that the group is doing already would no doubt amount to this amount that we're going to allocate, should it get through. I'm quite enthused by the fact that you have looked ahead to engaging with the school students in schools and participating with them. Some 30 odd years ago, that was a regular thing with our river systems here, where the marine biology students and school sciences did monitor the Inman River at least, and also I'm quite sure from memory the Hindmarsh River, and made notification that the public could see the health of our rivers. So it would be great to see programs like that come back, and it's also that then makes a very good or leads younger people, younger generation, the next generation into some great volunteering. So there's many, many valuable things to come out of such a group, and I commend you on your work.
Councillor Henderson?
Yes, I have to agree with what's been said. The condition of our two rivers and the deterioration of their environment with woody weeds has been talked about for many years, and it's great to see a group that is tackling at least that problem in one of these areas. So I'm in support of this too.
Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yep, I think it's a great initiative, and thank you to the group for taking this on board themselves to beautify one of our main estuaries. One of the things, I guess, is twofold. One is about reducing our toxic weeds in the environment, but also is about regreening. It falls in within our environmental plan to regreen our area or rewild it, as they call it. So I think that's a great initiative. I would ask the Director of Asset and Infrastructure to look at the outside team, if they could help support more, maybe less contractors, if the outside doors team can actually look at doing some of that work as well, which reduce some of the cost in that process. But that's just a question for you to have a think about, if that's possible, or provide other support to the group in other areas. Thank you.
Is there any more commentary from members? Do you want to close the debate? Councillor Glasbrook, anything further to add? Can you just clarify that the wording's what you want?
Yeah, no, I just think that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank
I have
you.
nothing else to say.
All right, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And good luck to your group. And I think the fact that you've got, Mark, a unanimous decision from council to support the initiatives that you're doing just shows what great work that you have been doing. And I think for a small group that's only been working for a year, certainly when I've come down and joined you, I've seen the diversity of the group, how the group look after each other. You've got people with physical disabilities, you've got people with mental health issues, and you all come together around that social, economic and environmental goal that you have. Fabulous work. So thank you very much and best of luck for the future. Okay, let us move on. We do have some questions from the gallery. The first question is from Mr. Lucer. Keith Lucer, would you like to come and ask your questions?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question concerns the Section 48 of the Local Government Act. The question is, how many prudential reports have been placed before the council and or the public? It appears there are a number of projects on hold at this time of serious debt issues, which the ratepayers may have to shoulder in the future.
The answer I have for you is that as you suggested, that council is required, as per the Local Government Act, Section 48, as you said, to obtain and consider a prudential report when it engages in any project, and it's quite specific in terms of the types of projects that require prudential reports. So it's expected the expenditure of the council over the ensuing 5 years is likely to exceed 20% of the council's average annual operating expenses over the previous 5 financial years, or it is expected that the capital costs of the project over the ensuing 5 years is likely to exceed 4 million, or the council considers it's necessary or appropriate. In addition, a report is not required, even if it meets the expenditure threshold above, for projects in relation to road construction, road maintenance or drainage works. Council's also got a prudential management policy that can be found on our website if you're interested. But the last project that underwent a prudential review was the Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre in 2013.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have 3 questions from Team Victor. I'm not quite sure who is asking those questions. Mr. Charles.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Thank you for accepting my questions or questions from Team Victor. The first one. As you'd be aware, we've sent a letter to the Audit Committee. There's 4.5 pages of information and emails flying backwards and forwards. I won't enlarge on that, but First question, we believe the Audit Committee has not processed our correspondence request in a clear and transparent manner. Any official public request by email is correspondence received and must be tabled at a public meeting to which it is addressed. Our correspondence was not presented at the public meeting, minuted or discussed, and not declared confidential according to Section 270 of the Local Government Act. We note that the Audit Committee's terms of reference, and we've just quoted 2.1.6, review of the adequacy of the accounting internal control and specifically reporting and other financial management systems and practices of the council on a regular basis. That's part of the terms of reference for the committee, and so we believe our question is in fact worthy of being answered. And our question to you, or our answer, sorry, beg your pardon, the actual question, and I was going to say the answer to all of these questions, or question is, Mayor, are you and Council satisfied with all the procedures that have been correctly followed in this particular instance?
Yes, I am comfortable that the Audit Committee is fulfilling its responsibilities under its terms of reference.
Thank you. Number two, we believe the Audit Committee's return correspondence did not follow due process nor customer service practices. That is according to ours, Victor Harbor Council. Team Victor provided a return email address but were not directly replied to. And as you can see, the reply went to our, well, I should say, I really don't know her technical position in council, but one of the directors. So I won't mention the name because that wouldn't necessarily be fair. Mayor, are you satisfied all procedures have been correctly followed in this instance?
Yes, I'm comfortable that the Audit Committee has followed appropriate procedures in relation to correspondence from yourself, as it's not their role to respond to inquiries from the public, but rather fulfil the requirements of their role in accordance with the terms of reference.
Thank you for that. Finally, it's just a supplementary, Mayor, and I'll be quoting here, Mayor, are you and the council is in agreement with the chair of the Audit Committee that, and this is a quote from the chair of the Audit Committee, the matter presented to the committee, and they do not believe that this is a matter for the Audit Committee to investigate. Do you agree with that statement?
I'm comfortable that in accordance with the terms of reference, it's not the role of the Audit Committee to investigate matters brought to them by members of the community. Any concerns regarding maladministration that warrant investigation should be provided directly to the Office of Public Integrity for their consideration, and I advise you to do that if you're concerned.
And as you've noticed, thank you very much, Mayor, we did not accuse anyone of maladministration. That was from the chair of the Audit Committee. That's their definition. Anyway, you'll read the lot eventually, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next question from the gallery is from Tim Mitchell. Can you turn on your microphone, please, Mr. Mitchell?
So, thanks for letting me ask these two questions. My interest in this was prompted by questions from Councillor Robertson at the budget meeting last Monday. He asked a question about the purchase of a new mayoral vehicle, and I believe whether that could be deferred for a year as a perhaps cost-saving measure in light of the $5 million blowout in the capital expenditure budget that we were advised of on that night. So, but there was no discussion of what that vehicle would be if it was being purchased and what the current one was. So in order to have a sort of informed view of it, I'd like to know, do we have a current mayoral vehicle? How old, what was the year of manufacture? What make and model vehicle is it? And what is the approximate odometer reading? Because obviously a vehicle that's, say got 300,000 kilometres on it is closer to replacement than one that's got 60,000.
The council does not provide me with a current vehicle. I don't have a current mayoral vehicle.
All right, so there's no current vehicle. That's answered that question. There was no information on how much has been budgeted or what is the expected cost of a replacement vehicle should it be purchased in the next financial year, or its make or model?
So the draft 2022-23 capital budget, as presented to elected members at the workshop, included an allowance of $38,000 for the provision of a vehicle to the Mayor in line with the council member policy and benefits policy, as council member allowance rather, and benefits policy. This has since been reviewed and it has been removed to assist lowering the capital budget. After council elections later this year, the new council will be required to review the policy and endorse changes to the budget if required.
Thank you for that information. I suppose,
Sorry, have you got a supplementary question?
Well, no, well, it makes the question sort of superfluous of would it be a hybrid vehicle to, you know, cut our fuel costs, our fuel use, improve our environmental footprint. But if it's been cancelled, then that's sort of superfluous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
There are no petitions, and so we now move to item 9, the outstanding resolutions. And the recommendation is that council receive and note the outstanding resolutions June 2022 report. Moved by councillor, seconded by councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak? Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Page 25, second from the bottom, the Victor Dragon lease proposal. Reading this, I have a suggestion or have a question here. Isn't it not possible that that we could allocate part of Lot 202 as a very temporary home to the Victor Dragons, the place right next door, which has already been identified for the next to the Sea Rescue? Is it not possible for us to grant them strictly temporary use of that piece of land until a final decision is made?
Kathy? Thank you. Through the Mayor. A couple of things there. One is if we grant them temporary use of the land, presumably they'll build their shed there and expend their funds and the council grant, so then we'd have to relocate it, so there may be some false economy there. And secondly, we're just at the moment, as you know, going through that development of what that concept looks like on that land. We are looking at whether or not we can include the dragons, and that is, I think Wednesday is our workshop where we have the first look at what that concept might look like. So opportunity to further think about that there. But we're definitely...
Yeah, I thought I had made it clear, but often I don't, that it would be strictly on a temporary basis. In other words, if they wanted to provide shelter for their boats, then they'd probably have to put up a tent or something like that. But just so that they could have a temporary place to go, they can squat there. They've got to be gone if they don't get allocated. So my question was, all of that, is it possible that we could think about something like that?
Through the Mayor, everything's possible in terms of thinking of a temporary space like that. I'm not sure if that would meet the requirements of the Dragons, having that sort of temporary facility, some sort of canopy or some cover. We could certainly discuss that with them if that is an option that would resolve their challenge. I'm not sure that it would. And then in terms of the space, we could look at that further with you on Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you. Next one is second from the top on page 26, Main Street, stage 5. It's about the design options for this particular stage. It says here, design team led by Oxygen are further working on the design options as per direction with the council report and subsequent resolution ongoing. The work that Oxygen are doing at present, this ongoing work, is that within the 21-22 budget?
Through the Mayor, yes, it is within the 21-22 budget under the current contract that we have with Oxygen, which will also be whipped into the 22-23 budget.
Sorry, great, you've preempted my follow-up, which was if they continue working in a few days' time, then they'll be using 21-22 money or 22-23?
Correct, it'll be whipped into the 22-23 budget.
21-22 funds?
Yes, correct.
Go into that, yep, okay. Then the page 27, sorry, got fingers to work on this. The Arts and Culture Centre, the development application to be lodged. Yeah, so sorry, third item from the bottom. Workshop, council resolved to recommend the development application has been lodged and the heritage impact assessment, traffic and parking assessment and 3D survey are underway and due for completion by 30th, due for completion in 3 days' time. Just wanted to check on that. Is the will, as far as the administration knows, will all those works be ready in 3 days?
Through the Mayor, the 3D survey is expected still to be completed within the next 3 days. I don't have an up-to-the-minute update on that, but that was the expectation about a week ago still. It's likely that the heritage impact assessment won't be completed, nor will the traffic assessment be completed, so that will need to be whipped into next year as well.
So that would, I'm not asking for anything really definite, but I mean, will they finish in July or do you think it'll take a lot longer than that? Or I'm interested in when this thing is going to go to.
Yeah, again, through the Mayor, we'd expect that it'd be completed in a matter of weeks, but certainly wouldn't be months or towards the end of the year. They're currently engaged to complete as soon as possible to support the development application.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or any further discussion in relation to the outstanding resolutions? No. In that case, I'll put that recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 9.2 is review of our privacy policy and our graffiti management policy. I can do that recommendation en bloc unless anybody specifically would like me to do each recommendation as they come. If someone would like to move it en bloc, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Councillor Hales, and seconded by, thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
I have some questions and and something to say to this. I know this is dreadfully dull for most people, it is for me, but dreadfully dull policy stuff. But I think it's a bit of a pity this wasn't the subject of a workshop, brief workshop, not a long one. But given there's a lot of changes taking place in this space, and I see a matter of confusion in this report as to whether this privacy policy in particular is one that should be the subject of a policy or of regulation. And it seems as though we've recognised that it might be better off as a regulation, but here we are amending policy. Yeah, because especially in the privacy area, there's a lot going on in terms of issues like CCTV cameras, which is thankfully mentioned in here. Recently, I think it was the Adelaide City Council has decided not to purchase cameras that have got facial recognition capabilities. Don't know why they did that. If they really want to catch villains, then it's best if you use facial recognition. But anyway, they have concerns of their own, but I would hope that we would put in place cameras that have facial recognition capability. But then I have a question on page 40 here, is at the very top sentence, at the top of page 40, it says here that in an inclusion says, a sign will be placed on council infrastructure where appropriate, stating, in inverted commas, CCTV in use. And along with a couple of other places in this document, I wondered where appropriate, what would that mean? I don't think it's good to be sticking stuff in these policies which are not defined. What's the where appropriate?
Yeah. Kelly, could you perhaps respond to that?
Thank you, through the Mayor. So it is normal practice already where there is CCTV to have some signage. You will notice it, I think, even on this building, we have some. Yeah. Occasionally, there won't be an appropriate place to put signage, and so it will be as near to the CCTV that's in use to let people know. So there may just be a sign at the end of the street saying CCTV is used within this area, but it might not be everywhere there is actually a camera. So it's more just stating what we currently do in terms of letting the public know that that is in use in an area.
Okay, and another question, if I might, on page 44, there's a bit of some woolly language in here in relation to private graffiti. If there is private graffiti, I notice in here that we have removed out of here the issue of private costs, and then it's been put in instead that the council may elect to remove graffiti from private residences, and to me if it is to be a cost to council that we are removing graffiti, can we claim those costs from insurance?
Through the Mayor, generally not with graffiti. We can recover it from private properties where we can, if we do need to remove it. So the emphasis in the policy was more about private properties where graffiti has occurred and it's visible in the public realm, and where it might be offensive and have a negative impact on our sort of our reputation and or tourism amenity for people. But we can, with negotiation with the private owner, undertake to recover costs from them if we do the work.
Yeah. And lastly, if I might, they talk about in this graffiti policy here about the issue of public art, and of course we've in the past had bursts of activity on granting permission for Stobie poles to be painted up. What's the position of painting up Stobie poles? Often the way to deal with things like graffiti is to actually encourage more art or more local art than it seems to push out the graffiti as a way of getting rid of graffiti. But what is our proposal? Because here it takes away out of the graffiti part of this policy and just says, oh, it's something to do with the Arts and Culture Committee or something like that. To me, do we have a serious, going back to the issue of graffiti, are we encouraging people to do things like paint up Stobie poles?
Through the Mayor, so I'm not 100% sure if we've got an actual policy or position on encouraging basically public art without council council's permission, but essentially if we wouldn't deem it graffiti and applicable under this policy if it was a council endorsed activity on infrastructure. So if council had given consent for the paintings to occur on council property, it wouldn't fall under this particular policy itself. It would come through the arts and culture section rather than through this graffiti policy.
And lastly, if I might, core flutes at council elections, are they considered to be graffiti?
I don't think at this election we're able to have core flutes. I think that's something that the Electoral Commission have made a determination on, but we'll follow that one up
That's good.
as well. But that's certainly core flutes are not part of that recommendation.
Yeah, great. Oh, I just wondered if they were to be crossed out. Yeah.
I think for local government elections they are. Is there any further commentary or questions? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. On the private policy on page 5 of 8, 37 of the agenda, 6.3, integrity and security of personal information. Council will take such steps as are reasonable in the circumstances too, and we've got a list of things. How do you find reasonable to give confidence to the community that their personal data will be secured? Should it be a more stronger sentence in there that they will endeavour to, or they'll be sure, or something reasonable? So how do you find reasonable to one person to another is totally different? Can we make it a bit stronger to give confidence to our community?
Through the Mayor, I guess what is reasonable is different to all different people in terms of reasonable. What we've basically said in here is that we will take all the steps that we can within our resources that is commonly required in terms of personal information and redacting or destroying information once it's used so it can't be misused. It would be difficult to be extremely precise in terms of what's reasonable because that chain can change in terms of technology and things that come into place as well. So the procedures that sit underneath this policy in terms of correspondence that comes in, out, how we provide things in council agendas, that's what gives us the ability to be very specific about how we deal with those.
Thank you. Just a supplementary question. With our new enterprise resource system coming into play, would that provide a higher level of security for our information we collect, council?
Through the Mayor, it may not necessarily provide a higher level of security, but it will make it much easier for us to maintain and monitor.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or any further commentary on relation to item 9.2? No. Councillor Hales, you moved that on block, I think. Did you want to say anything? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. Recommendation 1 and block. All those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3, council rebate application, and this is from the Adelaide Benevolent Society. And I'm happy to do those 3 recommendations on block. Recommendations 1, receiving and noting, 2, denying the application, and 3, also denying the application for the rate rebate. Would someone like to move all 3 on block, or would you prefer me to separate them? Councillor Robertson?
All 3 on block.
All 3 on block. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Hales. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Glasbrook?
I'll just start with a question and to clarify, I'm not sure I've got my story correct here. So this organisation offers its accommodation to, unemployed people or people with all sorts of, problems at a 75% of the full rate. Is that like a 25% discount? Is that correct?
Through the Mayor, I believe so. It would vary depending on the circumstances of the people that were using the accommodation at the time as well.
Well, I have a list of reasons in there. I did read them. I didn't take a lot of note of it, but they had to be on welfare benefits, and there was quite a criteria for these people. Anyway, my thoughts are that if this organisation is genuinely offering people in these circumstances reduced rent, and I've heard it mentioned in this chamber many, many times about trying to support our people on welfare, and the homeless people and the housing crisis and everything else that's been brought up, how we'd like to help them. I was just wondering if this is an opportunity to help those people. And I'm not considering 75%. I just thought that perhaps if someone was prepared to give a 10 and a 25% discount, whether it would be appropriate for council to give a 25% discount rather than 75%. Because if we genuinely want to encourage this sort of thing, well, this is an opportunity, but I'm not sure if I'm barking up the wrong tree or not. So it's sort of a bit of a question and a bit of a rave all at the same time.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Henderson.
No, I'm sorry. I was hoping someone would answer that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm very serious about this.
Sorry, Kelly.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So I'm not 100% sure exactly the percentage that they offer discounted to each of anybody that applies to use their facilities. They don't necessarily need to be a local either, so they do have accommodation for holiday rentals and things like that. They don't meet the criteria under what they've applied for in terms of supported accommodation, because they require the people that are using the properties to be fairly independent, whereas the supported accommodation requires a higher level of dependency. So if council wishes to provide a rebate, it can do so under the discretionary, because the mandatory, we don't believe that it meets that criteria, but council could choose to provide a discretionary rebate if they wished. The risks from that in terms of reducing council's revenue and then potentially setting a precedent for other properties that also don't meet the criteria in the same way, which would have a potential impact on the budget of around 300,000.
Yes, no, I saw that in the report. Mind you, that was based on 75%. I'm only talking about 25. Anyway, I just thought it's an opportunity. As I say, I sit in this chamber and I hear lots of things said, how we want to help people on welfare with housing and whatever else. Well, here's an opportunity. I understand that they don't meet the criteria, but if they're genuinely offering reduced rentals for, the vulnerable people in our community, well, maybe we should help them and maybe we should encourage it. So I don't know. I think of things differently to everybody else, but I wanted to have that conversation at least.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Kelly has just about said everything I was going to say. I'm sure this group is doing some very good work, and it's good to see they're trying in any way they can to support those in need, especially at this critical time. And I do wish we could help them, but I was going to say what Kelly has simply said quite eloquently is that they don't actually meet the eligibility criteria, and it would set a precedent. And maybe this can be approached by them in another way. I'm not sure, but I can't support this as it sits on the table.
Are there any further commentary in relation to the recommendation? Councillor Kemp.
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. It is disappointing that we can't help them because they don't meet the criteria. But I noticed in the commentary there that we reviewed discretionary rebates and discontinued a process in 2016. How often do we review these rebates for rateable properties in this criteria? Is it time we should review them and relook at it now, considering that things have changed in the community? There are greater homelessness and support required for our people community, etc. So maybe we're dealing with old information. Maybe we should need to review it and look at and try and pick the current trends to try and provide some support where possible. Again, this comes back down to managing our budget for the community, because it's the community's money, where we basically if you give out in one hand, you take back in another, and you just can't keep giving all the time. I understand that, so it's really about trying to balance the budget by providing the right type of financial support, whatever the projects are, in that way. So just a question on reviewing our rebates process. Thank you.
So through the Mayor, the review that was done in 2016 was basically done to go through every rebate that council provided, discretionary or mandatory, and ensure that the historic data was still correct and that they still met the legislation. So it was quite a comprehensive review. That I think it was a KPA that year in terms of going through all of that. So what we've done since then is initiated essentially a mail out each year out back to the properties that are getting rebates to check that they haven't changed their criteria, that nothing's changed, so that we can update it and say, yes, we're still comfortable that they're on the list because they still meet the criteria. So it's more of an ongoing process now once we got all the historic data cleaned up.
Any further commentary? Councillor Robertson, did you want to close the debate?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I really appreciate the comments of Councillor Glasbrook and Kemp. While I recognise, as some other members, that we're just looking at this in a very process-oriented way, that it doesn't meet the criteria and therefore we should reject it. I'm well aware, as every other member in this chamber is, that we have a homelessness issue down here, and I think that we should be taking a closer look at organisations like this. Indeed, our own community housing, I believe that the council owns 3 or 4 houses, I stand to be corrected, which we have tenants in the town, and but that's just a drop in the bucket compared to the needs of the town with regard to low-income housing. So I think that it would be well worth our while to look at everything from zoning and the way in which we allow developers to come in and set high prices for land and housing, through to issues of what we do as a council through community housing, and then to see what else is out there. I don't know anything about the Adelaide Benevolent Society, and there's...
Councillor Robertson, you're wrapping up the debate.
Yep.
Please don't introduce any new material, and please keep your responses to the recommendations.
Yeah, well, the recommendations are that we give this rebate. The material coming forward in the discussion was about that we need to take a closer look at this issue of organisations like this society and the role they have to play in the current crisis that we have in our own society. Thank you.
Thank you. That closes the debate. I'll now put the recommendations on block to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? Item 10.1, Main Street Precinct Stage 4, Business Support Measures. I will do these recommendations separately because they may require quite a bit of debate. But the first one is receiving and noting the report. If someone would like to move that way. Councillor Schofield, thank you. And seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Hales. Do either of you want to speak to receiving and noting the report? Does anybody want to speak to receiving and noting the report? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The second recommendation is that the council endorse, and you'll see the 4 points there in relation to the grant scheme and the business support measures. Would somebody like to move recommendation 2? Thank you, Councillor Hales. And seconded by Councillor Robertson. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Hales? No. Councillor Robertson, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One thing that, just as a comment that I had in this was that I'm surprised that that these activities in here didn't seem to have any input or any lifting from Business Victor Harbor. Were they invited to participate in this program?
Through the Mayor, we certainly did have some conversation with Business Victor Harbor about the program. In terms of them, it was a fairly informal discussion though through one of our regular meetings with them in terms of the types of initiatives that we were looking to introduce with a view to, if they were supported by council, that certainly some of those would be helped by Business Victor Harbor. In terms of just their connection into the community, into the business community.
Right, okay. Yep, I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Yep, what I have to say, thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak to recommendation 2? Carol and then Councillor Kemp.
Yes, look, I'm just looking at the following limitations are proposed, and within that it's talking about 2,000 for outdoor equipment, promotional activities, and I'm just wondering the viability of that if the main street's closed. If the main street's closed, what's the purpose of getting more outdoor equipment? And I wondered whether the option would be, and it is on page 53, where we actually did discuss deferring the outdoor dining and annual street trader fees for the duration of the Main Street update. Wouldn't that be a better option than giving them a grant to purchase more equipment in a street that they're not going to be able to use it in for about 6 or 9 months? It's just a thought.
Graham?
Through the Mayor, the intent of the grants really are to leverage the opportunity that is presented by the upgraded street going forward at the end of the works. So the idea about outdoor equipment is not so much for utilisation during the course of the work, granted that would be very difficult to do in the circumstances of a work zone. It's more around those that are requiring outdoor equipment at the end of the project, or renewed outdoor equipment, so that the outdoor equipment can be sympathetic to the design of the street. And so if it's new outdoor dining, if it's new outdoor displays or anything of the like, it fits in with the look and the feel of the new streetscape.
Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just looking at the budget implications on page 57, how much funds are already allocated for the 22-23 budget? Because it says insufficient funds to cover the 85,000. Well, my reading is wrong because I don't know what the actual budget line is for 22-23.
Through the Mayor, so it's basically saying there's insufficient funds because we haven't included this 85,000 in the draft budget at this point in time. So if council decided to endorse the recommendations, there would be an increase to the 22-23 draft or budget itself, subject to council endorsement of the rest of the budget of $85,000. So essentially it's asking for a pre-budget commitment to move this forward, and we would include it in the draft that comes to council for adoption.
Thank you. It's interesting, some of the initiatives there, and you look at under the total grant pool of 50,000, maximum available per applicant is 8,000. So we require the applicant to contribute 50% of that. So if we're going through our Main Street upgrade where they're going to be losing business, losing money, you're going to be asking for 50% up, to help upgrade what they want. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how you look at that one. Some of the building works sounds great, but not all the traders own their buildings, they lease them. So we're improving the landlord's building, not the traders. Certainly some other areas of promotional activities to help do their signage on their building to make it look good, but I guess they've got to get owner's permission. So it's not as simple as it looks up front. I'm not quite sure we've got it right yet at the moment. Certainly at this stage, I'm not quite sure if the uptake will be there, if we're asking people that, oh, by the way, you have to give us $4,000 if you want 8,000. So that might discourage a lot of people. So I'm not quite sure if we've got that calculation correct or how we can do it better. So I'm sort of not supporting this as it's written at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Did you want to respond to any of that?
Yeah, through the Mayor, just to simply say that it's not perfect in terms of a utopia. Not everything is for everyone. So what we're trying to achieve is a mix of things that would help support. If someone can't plug into one area of support or help because they actually don't own their building, then there might be other areas that they can take advantage of through this program of activities. And it might not just be under the grant pool, it might be under the other activities that are also being designed for support as part of the next resolution.
Just a question, Mayor Jenkins. Am I sort of seeing that the staff are getting involved in the debate and not answering a question? I'm not quite sure what the question you asked Mr. Pathouse when he spoke.
I'm not quite sure what I asked Director Pathouse if he wanted to clarify anything or
I assume that, my understanding of meeting procedures, staff can't be involved in the debate of the chamber to answer questions from the chamber, but I just got the impression that it sounded like he was getting asked to be involved in the debate. I'm just asking the question if that's what you did.
No, I'm not asking staff to be involved in the debate, Councillor Kemp. I think it's really important, and one of the underlying things that I, as presiding member, need to make sure is that everybody has all of the information. So if any of the elected members are unsure of anything, or if I think that something needs to be clarified, I will ask the staff if they can do that, so that all elected members are fully informed during the debate and can make an informed decision in relation to the recommendation. Are there any further questions or any further debate in relation to recommendation 2? No. Councillor Robertson, did you want to close the debate? Or was it? No, sorry, Councillor Hales. No. I'll put that to the floor then. All those in favour? 3 by 6. And those against? That's carried. Thank you. I move to recommendation 3. That council include an allocation of $30,000 within the 2022-23 annual business plan to engage TSA management to support the delivery of additional Main Street activation initiatives in relation to the project. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Hales. Councillor Glasbrook, would you like to speak to that?
Oh, look, just briefly, I didn't support the last one because I didn't see how that was going to support our businesses really get through this upgrade, but I think there is a chance that this one here could support our businesses, get a bit more activity down there. So I'm in favour of this one. Thank you.
Councillor Hales? Does anybody have any questions or would like to contribute to the debate? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I like Councillor Glasbrook. Think that there's the possibility of this increasing business and therefore cash flow for the businesses in the street. This figure of $30,000, the lady who's Belinda Voigt from TSA Management, who's going to be given the this task. I presume that it is a contract with her or with TSA Management.
Through the Mayor, she is TSA Management, so yes, it's her firm is TSA Management.
Okay, because I understand, and I'm certainly sure it is, that she's done a lot of very good work in relation to the to engaging with the business owners already. I'm not quite sure what that is, but I'm sure if you say that it's doing good work, then it is. But this is a big whack of money. That $30,000 is 2/3 of what we've voted for the Main Street Revitalisation Grant Scheme, and I was hoping that there would be, at this stage, presenting to spend another $30,000 in 22-23, that we would have had a lot more information about what this lady was going to achieve here, because some of the stuff here on the bottom of page 52, for instance, is what one would expect to find as part of the job that she's doing in support of the Main Street upgrade. And so I would have liked to have seen, if we're going to spend that much money, that would have liked to have seen, what she was actually going to be doing. So what I'd like to see is that we, for $30,000 at the next council meeting, that we get from her a program of work with some key performance indicators of what she hopes to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'm sure that Director Passhouse would be able to ask her to outline to us what work she's carried out if Council decide to put this money forward. Are there any further comments or questions in relation to recommendation 3? Councillor Glasbrook, did you want to close the debate? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Final recommendation is in relation to endorsing.
Sorry, Mayor Jenkins. I'd like to declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to this next one, as I'm a very frequent user of Stewart Level car park during work hours for longer than 2 hours. So I'll leave the chamber to deal with that.
Thank you. The fourth recommendation is that Council endorse the introduction of a 2-hour time limit at the Stewart Level car park. Does someone want to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Do you want to speak?
I will just clarify on seconding that. This is a short-term measure, isn't it? It doesn't put a timeline or anything there. This is not forever and ever, amen.
Graham?
Through the Mayor, it wasn't intended to be forever and ever, amen, but we could just clarify that it's for the duration of the upgrade works or the Main Street Stage 4 works.
Thank you. I'll be happy to second that.
Yeah.
Yep. So you'll second that with the clarification on there that it's during
16.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Robertson?
Up to December 16. That's when the project's supposed to finish?
I think we'll leave it as when the project is finished. It might finish earlier and we wouldn't want to leave it going on further
Yeah, it might
restricting car parking.
I'm happy with that addition.
Thank you. Does anybody want to speak to that? No, if there's no one wants to speak to that and you're all happy with that, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. If you could bring Councillor Mann back in.
While Councillor Mann's coming in, I might take that opportunity to declare my conflict of interest for the next one. So I'll declare that I have a material conflict of interest with item 10.2, as I'm involved in one of the applications in this process, and so I'll leave the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. Item 10.2, and I'm happy to do that recommendation en bloc unless anybody wants me to do it separately. Move that way, Councillor Henderson.
Yes, I'll move that en bloc.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Schofield, thank you. Do either of you want to speak to that?
No, just to say that it's unfortunate that the applicant 3 didn't get the funding that they thought they were getting, support funding from another body. But I agree with the reasons for not supporting these.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this or have any questions in relation to the recommendations? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions, if I might. 3 applications were received. The Councillor Mann here declared a perceived conflict of interest in relation to the application 3. It didn't say what happened. Did he stay and vote, or did he leave? If that's a question to Councillor Mann, I don't know if it's a question to the
No,
chamber.
we're talking about the 2 recommendations. We're not talking about anybody's conflict of interest. We're talking about recommendations, council receiving and noting the Youth Development Grants report and that no grant funding be awarded.
Yes, well.
I'm not sure what that's got to do with Councillor Mann.
Well, we're now debating the combined, the 2 en bloc, right?
Yep.
So if you don't speak now, you don't get a chance to speak again, right? You ask for questions and debate.
The questions need to be related to the recommendations, Councillor Robertson. I'm just asking, I'm not quite sure I don't understand what your question is relating to the recommendations.
Well, I have a couple of questions about this this program here, the way in which this whole thing was conducted, and the fact that it was so far, at least, unless the chamber decides otherwise, that it was a complete failure. And on something that's as important as youth development, I couldn't believe it when I read this particular item on the agenda. So I just have some questions in here, and one of them was that Councillor Mann, who is one of the members of the panel assessing the applications, that he declared a perceived conflict of interest, and I was interested to know, it didn't say whether what he did in declaring that conflict of interest, was it to say that I declare a perceived conflict of interest, and of course if he wishes to stay on the committee for that and then and to vote on that, he can do so. Just that I didn't say what happened, just said he declared a perceived conflict of interest.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from now. Thank you for explaining. Yes, he declared a perceived conflict of interest as a member of the Impact Church, and that was an organisation that was included in one of the applications. And Councillor Mann, can you?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'm happy to respond to that. Yeah, I just, as stated, declared a perceived conflict of interest as attending that church who were a proponent. However, still voted and discussed in that as one of the few assessors, and just made aware that at that time I was attending that, but didn't sit on any board or have any direct involvement in that element of the church.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Any
Yeah.
further questions, Councillor Robertson?
I would be very unhappy if we walked away from this particular activity, and that we didn't have any youth development grants come out of it. I fail to see. I mean, with one of the structured golf clinics there, it was rejected because maybe this was a sport and recreation grant. When to me, it was clearly a youth development activity. Yes, it was to do with a sport, but you know, that it wasn't a sporting grant at all, really. It's more one of structured golf clinics, and then so to me it wasn't a good reason to chuck it out. And I agree with in part with the application 3 that it's a pity that nothing came of that. There was a good proposal put forward, and the Encounter Bluethen Sensory Place. Well, again, here we go. It was said to be the core business of an education facility and not appropriate to this grant. Well, you know, schools don't cover everything to do with youth development, and the struggle with things like sensory well-being, and so, you know, why that was tossed out and not given further oxygen is beyond me. I also felt that some of the reasoning behind the panel recommendations was one that were a bit woolly.
So, Councillor Robertson, the chamber is able to change the recommendations if you want. If anybody thinks that any of those should be given, then you can amend the recommendation and ask that it be given. You can change it. It's up to the chamber.
Well, it's 21-22 budget, and this is the last meeting of the 21-22 year. Unfortunately, we're getting this thing now, but if there's any way that we could find returning the funds that we'd set aside for youth development, and on the basis of really pretty flimsy thinking.
We can still pay it this year. We can still pay it this year.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm getting to that, is to say that send it back to this committee or form another committee. Maybe the same committee can't wrap its mind around making sure that something comes out of these things, but the...
Councillor Robertson, it doesn't have to go back to a committee. You can make a decision tonight as to where those funds go in relation to those 3 applications.
Well, I thought that there was merit in all 3 applications. The one for the golf clinics, that's pretty easy. That's only, I think it was $1,000 or something. So I don't see why we shouldn't go ahead with that one. The remaining ones, there was some partner money coming forward to for the number 3. It's a trial program.
No, the partner money was cancelled, which is why it wasn't given to number 3.
Sorry?
The partner money was cancelled.
Okay.
So that's why, because it was going to go to application 3, but the Impact Church was going to provide further funding contribution of $20,000. It decided not to do that, and so applicant 3 wasn't able to go ahead with just the council funding.
Okay, but then it's a trial program. So why don't we go back to them and say, hey guys, you know, things have changed. There's no longer 40,000, there's 20,000 there. What can you do for 20? I mean, not to let this thing the reputational damage to this council out of just passing this thing as it's put in front of us is enormous, I think, and unconscionable. And the funds we had set aside for that, we should definitely make sure they're allocated. If there's a trial program, scale it back, fit the cloth to what you need, rather than try to do everything all at once.
Councillor Robertson, put a motion to the floor. You put a motion to the floor. You are the chamber. If you don't agree with the recommendations that the administration give you, you can put the motion to the floor. If you think it's unconscionable, put something there that you think is more palatable for yourself and the community, and see what the chamber think of it. And we can go out of session if you want to debate it and talk about it.
Well, I would like to hear what other members think as well. I'll certainly.
Would you like to go out of session for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
All of those who would like to go out of session for 10 minutes? Sorry, Councillor 2. Sorry, we need to stay in session.
Yeah.
But if you would like to amend the recommendation and you have a seconder for your amendment and it goes through, then you can do that.
All right. Well, I think that how much was, if I can ask the administration, please, how much was available in the total grant?
Through the Mayor, the entire program was $30,000 for this financial year.
$30,000. My bid would be to give the Structured Golf Clinic the big tick, their $1,000, and I would split the remaining money between the other two, application 3 and 2, and let them come back to us with a proposal as to how that the intent that they had would be able to be done. A trial from application 3 and a proposal from Encounter Lutheran for application 2.
So you are saying that you want to amend the recommendation 2, for $1,000 to go to the Structured Golf
Victor
Clinic.
Harbour Golf Club. Yep.
And for $20,000 to be split application 3 and 2. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Thank you, Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for that? So we're clarifying that that $1,000 go to the Structured Golf Clinic. $29,000 is split between. So $14,500 goes to the Encounter Lutheran Sensory Wellbeing Space. So they only asked for 13.5. And 14.5 go to the Victor Harbour Youth Centre.
Point of order, please.
Yeah. I've just had some advice from the CEO, and I think she's quite right in terms of this amendment is much more, it's quite different to the substantive motion. So I'm not going to allow the amendment, Councillor Robertson, because it is too different to the original motion. But if the motion is not carried, then you may be able to move a separate motion if that motion doesn't go ahead. So I do apologise for that. Yep. Councillor Kemp, you called a point of order. Was that in relation to that point?
Yes, my point of order was along the lines that the amendment is way out of line with the original motion.
Yep. No, I agree with that. Let me just go where we are. So we've got the original motion. Councillor Henderson and Councillor Schofield. Councillor Robertson spoke to it. You want to speak to it, Councillor Kemp?
This is the second motion I guess we're talking to now, isn't it?
They were done on block.
Thank you. Look, I support the motion as standing due to the fact that at the moment there are some gaps in the applications. One, they're looking at a building. No building's been identified. This has come before council in another forum where they want a building, possibly from council, which would be additional costs. We don't know what that cost would be, what building it will be, or they'll get a private building they could use. So I just think that until there's more information for we to go ahead, provide a grant of that amount of money of 30,000, we need to have a better understanding exactly how that money will be spent and where, and what will come out of it. So until that comes forward, I think I support this motion as it stands. It doesn't meet the criteria because there's gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Does Councillor Glasbrook?
Yes, I support this motion as well. But I would just like to mention, if Councillor Robinson feels strongly enough, he should potentially, after this motion, move a motion that perhaps the council go out again for expressions. That would be a far more appropriate way to deal with this, I believe. And the funds could be whipped over the next financial year, but we'll see.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Is there any further commentary in relation to this motion, Councillor Mann?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, no, I definitely agree that this could be something we go back out to the community and ask for. But I think what we want to be clear on, and I think that's a few points Councillor Robertson might not have picked up, is that with the program, it's the group assesses it based on council's policy in terms of the youth grant program, and that's all it is. It's comparing it against a policy that this chamber's set or a program, and part of those are things such as a statement of larger projects of up to 30,000 with strategic and stated outcomes for young people aged 12 to 25 are highly recommended. And whilst the process around it, and it's unfortunate that one of the proponents lost the funding and the ability to do that, at the point in time comparing the three and based off council's guidelines, that's what the group saw as the best outcome for the community. Unfortunately, that has fallen through, and I guess around we can still use this money. I think Councillor Robertson makes great points about let's not just forget about youth development or let's not look for those options. But I think instead of going quickly and putting it into applications that didn't necessarily meet the exact criteria of what we were looking for or did have a few holes in them, I think the suggestion by Councillor Glasbrook to go out again is an exceptional one. And that can, and I guess remembering at the end of the day, whatever comes here is completely up to council to decide as to which way they go.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate? No. I'll put this to the floor then. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. And I think that is a good idea to go back out for community consultation again and carry that funding over the next financial year. And I think it's a shame that application 3 didn't get the matched funding, because that would have certainly been a really good initiative, and we have been calling out for a youth centre of some sort for quite some time, and I'm hopeful that that will be able to happen in the future. Can somebody
Excuse
please...
me, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, are you going to do it? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, put your motion, councillor Robertson. Can you turn your microphone on, please?
That this council recommends that the youth development grants be, put out or re-advertised as soon as possible.
Yes, I'll just ask councillor Hales to come back in while they're writing that up.
And put the funding over. Yeah.
I might just ask Kelly to help you with that in terms of the financial implications of that.
What's WIP?
Rather than talking in between yourselves, if you talk through me, I might be able to help you. Kelly, can you assist with that, please?
Thank you, through the Mayor. So there is $30,000 included in the draft 22-23 budget for youth grants. So if you wanted to carry this additional one over, you'd be looking at having $60,000 in the budget for next year. So that's possible, but we just need something within the recommendation to say that you would like that increase from 30 to 60 in next year's budget.
Yeah. So
Excuse me, can I ask a point of clarification about what Kelly just mentioned? Why can't we whip that across? Matter of Finance, we do it with everything else. We've just done it already tonight.
So through the chair, so in terms of the monies that are in the budget, they're not actually cash until we go to spend it. So we haven't drawn down on any loans or any reserves to fund that yet. So we still need to take across the $30,000 additional into the expense lines for next year to allow us to essentially pay those grants out to the value of $60,000 if you would like it increased to double what it is now.
Could I just ask a further question? The difference is, of course, that if it's whipped across, it'll come into this financial year rather than next financial year?
So if it's through the Mayor, if it's whipped across, it will be an expense in 22-23. What you will have is a reduction in your deficit for 21-22 by that $30,000 amount that was expected to be expended.
Okay.
A clarity question, please.
Clarification.
My understanding, this will be an operating budget expense. And my understanding of accounting standards, you don't really transfer from financial year to financial year operating budget. Capital budget you can, not a problem in WIP, but operating budget is very rare that you transfer funds from one year to another. Is that correct?
So through the Mayor, what we're talking about is a budget. It's a number written on a piece of paper until we actually choose to expend it. And so in terms of either budgets, we have a council policy that states that we can whip capital across because essentially we haven't taken down any borrowings to fund that if we're doing it in the next year rather than this year. We tend not to do that for operating as a general rule. So it requires council's considered decision to actually transfer budget from one year to the other. And what it means is we won't be spending that money in 21-22, but we're planning to spend it in 22-23.
Okay.
So, councillor Robertson, your motion is that council recommends that the youth development grants be re-advertised as soon as possible with the inclusion of an additional $30,000 to be included. You still want, with the next budget, you still want that?
Yes, I would put before the youth development grants, I'd put there the 21-22 youth development grant, which is $30,000. Yeah, be re-advertised. Well, I don't know whether the chamber wants to re-advertise them as soon as possible, but why not? I mean, because that doesn't necessarily mean that that 30 and 30 make 60 will be re-advertised, whether just the feeling that that 30 should be, but that applications for the grants be sought as soon as possible. And then they're passed with the inclusion of additional 30,000.
So decisions would have to be made by this chamber before the 6th of September when we go into caretaker mode. So I'm not sure that we'd be able to actually do any grants. I just need to check with that after caretaker mode. I'll just check with one of the staff. Kelly?
Through the Mayor, in terms of if the budget is endorsed and what council is approving the provision of a grant within the criteria and guidelines that have already been approved and the budget is approved, council could make that decision as far as I'm aware.
The guidelines also authorise the CEO to make the decision, Graham just said. So are you happy with that recommendation, Councillor Robertson?
Yep.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Robertson, do you want to speak to that? And you've already spoken. No, Councillor Glasbrook.
Oh, no, I think Councillor Robertson has well and truly said it all. But yeah, I certainly agree. We need to support our youth, and you know, we've left our run a bit late, so I think we should have 2 rounds next year, which is basically what this is saying. So I support it.
Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'm not going to support this motion. I'm not against youth. I think we certainly need to support our youth, but I think we need to have a better and a proper plan of approach and strategically look at how we can do it. Doing what I see as a piecemeal of, you know, potentially 60,000 may achieve some things, but it won't achieve the great thing that we're after. And that's what we need to plan in for, is to actually look at a complete youth development program with a structured building in place, etc. And that may come through future projects, but at the moment, just throwing another 30,000 at it, I don't think is the way the answer is. I think we work within our guidelines, we work within our budget constraints, and we're looking at trying to reduce the budget because of it's blown out, and here we are again throwing more money out there. So I prefer to keep to the status quo of what we budget for and work on that for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further commentary? Thank you, Councillor Littley.
I'll be supporting the motion because I believe that maintaining the status quo would be once again undermining the importance of an investment in our youth population here in the City of Victor Harbor. I think that they are often overlooked, and I know that we have budget considerations. I don't think youth development grants to, I guess, work with and inspire our youth and build their capacity. I don't think that's a budget consideration I don't think that's where we should be cutting our budget or holding back our budget. I think this should be supported. I hope the elected member body does support it.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
I'd just say that, you know, council plan to spend 60,000 across 2 years on youth development. This sees council spending 60k on youth development over 2 years, so I'm in support of it.
Any further discussion? Councillor Robertson, do you want to close the debate?
No, thank you, Mayor.
In that case, then I'll put it to the chamber. All those in favour? And those against? I have a division, please. All those in favour? Councillor Hales? Councillor Mann? Councillor Littley and Councillor Glasbrook? Councillor Robertson? Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson? And against, Councillor Kemp. Thank you very much, and thank you for making that that motion, Councillor Robertson. I think that supporting our youth is one of the things that everybody in this council have been talking about for a number of years, and if we can do that through re-advertising our grants and getting money for our young people. I think that's great, and it provides an opportunity for the Victor Harbour Youth Centre trial program to perhaps have another bash at getting a partnership to go ahead. We now move to item 11, the corporate and customer services and the artwork loan agreement. The recommendation I'll do in block unless anybody, you want me to do that separately, Councillor Kemp?
I'm quite happy to do it on block, thank you.
Yep, thank you. So you're happy to move that way? Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Would either of you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Look, I think it's a great opportunity. We have some great artwork. And it's great to share it out with the community, make some happiness in someone's life when they see it instead of being stuck in a storeroom. So I think that's fantastic that we should, I think for certain premises, we should do more of this to share our, but it is community, it belongs to the community technically. So we should be giving it out to the right facilities to showcase the art that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Schofield, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, I will. Look, I think it's great, and I also agree with Councillor Kemp that our artworks are magnificent pieces and should be shared with the community.
Thank you. Councillor Glassbrook.
Yes, just agree with what's been said. I would love for the council administration to consider in the near future putting some of these artworks into the public hospital as well. I think that'd be a great opportunity. We've got some spares. That definitely does state the private hospital. It is a separate area, so I'd love to see some in the public hospital as well if we've got a few extras.
Councillor Glassbrook, you're on the public hospital board, aren't you, as council rep? Perhaps you could suggest to the board that they write and ask us if they'd like any of the artwork, and that might be an avenue for us to be able to do that. Okay, I will. Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I echo totally what's said previously. This is great. I've had previous association with an organisation called Art Bank, which is a monstrous institution based in Sydney, which lends out, or actually no, it rents out, you know, major works of art to private individuals in their own homes. So if you want a Brett Whiteley in your house, Mayor, probably get one for a few $100 for the year, plus transport costs. It's great to get the this material out. I just have a couple of questions on page 79. About the fifth or sixth item down, it says transport of the artwork to and from the council is the responsibility of the borrower. I would think that's not a good idea. I would think that transportation and indeed the hanging of the artwork should be done by council staff. We'll get some training in this, taking it to the responsibility of the borrower. It wouldn't be thrown in the back of a ute, but it's inviting it to be damaged. And about the third one from the bottom, the artwork may be changed over on agreement, but generally not soon. Should be sooner, but not sooner than 3 months. I would make that 6 months just to make the administration of the job easier, or perhaps even 12 months, but at least 6 months. I would suggest those two changes.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to say? Councillor Mann.
I was just going to say quickly, if they want any of the artworks in here, it might be nice to have a bit of a rotation. I think after 4 years, we're pretty aware of what's up here. Change might be nice.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp, did you want to close the debate? No, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. Item 12, the reserve furniture fee waiver request. I will do that en bloc unless anybody prefers not to. If someone would like to move that en bloc, or I can do it separately. En bloc, it's Councillor Schofield moving that way, and do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Robertson. You want to speak to that, Councillor Schofield? Councillor Robertson? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Glasbrook?
Hey, I'd just like to ask a question again, make sure I've got this right. So these people have asked to put a plaque on an existing seat and they're going to pay for the plaque? I believe it says in the... That's correct?
That's
Thank
right,
you.
$339 for the plaque.
Which is being paid for by the applicant?
Yep.
Yes.
And our
So all we need to
policy
do is
says-
fit a plaque onto an existing seat?
That's right.
Okay.
But our policy currently says that they have to pay $2,798.
I understand that. I sort of struggle with that a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, that's, I mean, obviously I don't know who this person is again. I mean, we had another one recently and I didn't know the person, but that doesn't mean anything. Obviously this person means a lot to enough people to actually make the effort to write this letter to council, and I find it difficult that we would like to charge them $2,798 to put a plaque on an existing park bench. So I won't be supporting it, that's for sure. But I don't know, I could be wrong.
If this recommendation is not supported, then a further recommendation may be made by a member of the chamber. But you have done this en bloc. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'd like to make an amendment to recommendation 2 that council endorses the request fee waiver.
That's changing the recommendation completely.
Okay, fine.
So,
Fair enough, that's okay. I'll move a motion if required.
Okay, we've got I've said the recommendation is en bloc, so I can't separate them
So
at this
I
point.
won't, that's fine, thank you. I'm not supporting this because I think, again, if it was a brand new bench, yes, we'll expect the, the community to pay for it, but because it's already an existing bench, it's already paid for, I think it's no loss to council in that context. So putting a plaque on there at the cost of the community, I think is a better way to go. That's why I won't endorse the current recommendations.
Thank you. If this recommendation is lost, I will be suggesting a further recommendation, plus a recommendation to change the current, our current policy in relation to plaques on benches.
I want to move a motion to put the motion, please.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, no, sorry, do I have a seconder? A seconder to put the motion? That's seconded by Councillor Schofield. All those in favour of putting the motion? That's carried. I'll put the motion. Recommendation 1 and 2. All those in favour? And those against? That motion is lost.
Yep. Okay, I suggested I would move a new motion. I'll be the same motion, but I'll change the word from declined to endorsed.
So can I do that en bloc? Can you do that en bloc so that we're receiving and noting? Just wait for Katie to catch up. Can I add to that? Can I suggest in addition to that, Councillor Kemp, to your motion, that council review the current policy in relation to the park bench plaques?
I would see that as a third recommendation as part of the group, not just added to the second one.
Yeah, so would you like to move that as on block, third recommendation? What is the name of the policy? Street donation. The council review the donation and memorial plaque policy. 3. Yeah, happy to move that way. Okay, so Councillor Kemp has moved that way. Do I have a Councillor Littley? Do either of you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just to reinforce again that if this was a new seat that they were requesting, yes, pay as you go, but an existing seat already paid for, I think it's a good gesture to the community that, you know, we are recognising people in there, even though they might not come under the heritage list as such, but I think this is a good opportunity where existing seats can be used. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Littley?
Yeah, I'm in support of this particular endorsing the requested fee waiver. And I just consider in part 3 of this motion that council will review the policy. That in that review, we do have to give due consideration to the fact that we can't have plaques going on every piece of furniture around every street and every park in Victor Harbor. But I'm quite sure that that would be discussed in the review of the policy, along with other factors, other points of that policy. So I'm satisfied that that would happen in a review because it would be a full review. So.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Does anybody else want to speak to the recommendations? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just a quick question to administration. Just wondering how many chairs there are in our town without a plaque on it that we can put one on for about $340.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I might need to take that one on notice, Councillor Mann, and come back to you on that one.
Any further discussions on this? Councillor Hales?
Following on from Councillor Mann's line of questioning, I have many relatives, all of whom I think are very deserving of many things and have been. If I have $340 for each of them, if the policy was set as we're dealing with it tonight, I can put up a good case, they get a bench, as long as I have the $340. I think if we're going to review the policy, we should do that first and then consider whether we're waiving or not waiving things, because I think probably the vast majority of our community are good community members who deserve things like this because they've played their part. And doesn't make this application any less deserving because of that. It just means that we have a wide community and we only have so many park benches, to put it flippantly. So I think I'll still be voting against this. Happy to look at reviewing the policy and deferring this recommendation until after we've done so. But I think it's taking our role as the strategic decision maker a bit less flippantly if we were to do it in that manner.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Schofield, did you want to close the debate at all? Oh, sorry, Kemp, did you want to close the debate at all? No. I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's a tied vote. I'm going to vote for this. I think that while it takes hit of what Councillor Hales said, you know, even if you have plaques on a bench, I don't think that that matters. They're very small plaques. You can put them at the back of the bench, not the front of the bench. It's, you know, it's a way of having somebody in memory. And I think having to pay for a total bench when there is an existing bench there, I think is too much. But in saying that, I am aware that we're going against our policy. But I think that this is a good example of when a policy is to change. And if I think about the pub test, and I think about people talking about council charging $2,798 to put a $300-odd plaque on a bench, I don't think that passes the pub test. And so I'm pretty happy to look at that. And I think we need to change that. So I'm voting for this this recommendation. And thank you very much for moving it, Councillor Kemp. Right, it is 5 to 8 and we do have a break at 8 o'clock. So what I might do, rather than start on the next item, which is the Bluff Master Plan Community and Stakeholder Findings, which may take a while, I suggest we have a break now and we come back at 8:10 if people are happy with that. See you at 8:10. To formal proceedings. Okay, Katie? Yep, beautiful. All right, we're up to 12.2, which is the Bluff Master Plan Community and Stakeholder Engagement findings. I will do these recommendations one by one. I'm happy to move the first one, Councillor Henderson. And do I have a seconder for that, Councillor Schofield? Either of you want to speak to receiving and noting the report? Anybody want to speak to receiving and noting the report? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The second recommendation is that Council, having considered the community and stakeholder findings, endorse the key themes that will inform the development of a master plan for the Bluff. So they're described on page 94 and 95. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to them? Does anybody want to speak to the key themes that will inform the master plan? Not, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The third recommendation is that a draft master plan be presented back to Council for consideration prior to a second phase of community consultation being undertaken. Henderson again. Councillor Schofield again. Either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson.
Quick question, Mayor. Who's in charge of this? Director Hayter, I guess. Will there be in this draft master plan an estimation of the costs of what's being done? I appreciate that this isn't, there's still a community consultation, so the design or et cetera, could be changed, but I think they've got a massive amount of information and they've done a pretty good job of synthesising it. So I would imagine this draft master plan that they would be presenting would be pretty much it. But going out to community consultation, being the point of the exercise, do we have any, are we expecting to get from them also any kind of estimate of the costs?
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'll have to go back and check the brief, Councillor Robertson. I don't recall that we've asked them for cost estimates, but I will check, and perhaps I can, just so you're aware of that, perhaps I can let you know on Wednesday night when we discuss this at the workshop.
Okay.
Councillor Littley.
Yeah, I have a question, and I might be missing something, but looking through this work here, I don't see anywhere that there's a suggestion or a mention of toilet facilities in this plan. And I think despite, you know, this has to go through a lot of processes and consultations, community consultation, I think it would come as quite a surprise if there wasn't upfront, or it could be some challenges down the track if there wasn't upfront the mention of toilet facilities. Am I missing something?
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Lidley. Yes, I believe you are missing something. So on page 15 of the actual consultation report, you'll see there that community was asked about what are the things they would like to see up there, and one of them was public toilets and change facilities. So that is one of the considerations and one of the priorities of community to look at that.
Thanks for that.
Any further discussion in relation to recommendation 3? If not, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour and those against? That's carried. Thank you. I could have done that on block, couldn't I? I thought that there'd be more discussion about some of that. We now move to 12.3, the Youth Climate Change Initiative. And for those councillors that have been involved in this, the presentations by the young people in relation to this were just fantastic. And I'd like to thank the staff and our youth officer who really got behind this, and Karen's team, Kathy's team rather, who were just fantastic in relation to this youth climate change initiative. I'll do this recommendation en bloc, moved by Councillor Hales. And do I have a seconder there? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to this? No, does anybody want to speak to this? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? It's carried, thank you. And I really look forward to seeing the projects that the three colleges are going to actually hand out. I think they're really small projects. They've got a small budget, but they're very meaningful to the students and will have quite an impact both on the areas in which the projects are being carried out and on the students as well, who are really getting involved. One of the things I'll just say while we're on this climate change, whenever I have the young people from the high schools in here and we do a debate, the debate is always on either spending $1 million on a upgraded youth park and BMX track and sports facilities, or spending $1 million on the environment. Every single time the young people debate it, the winner is on the environment, and the environment is something that young people have consistently said is one of the most important things to them. So this is a really good reflection of that. If we go to 13.1, minutes of the Recreation Centre Management Committee, if someone would like to move that recommendation to receive and note the minutes. Thank you, Councillor Mann, and Councillor Hales seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to them? Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, Mayor. When I read this through, I was interested in the issue of the application by the high school for the to convert the storeroom to usable space. But then I realised that this wasn't an old centre management committee. It was held on the 10th of May. So I'd like to ask the administration, why is it that this committee meeting, the minutes of this meeting, why weren't they presented to the May Council? This was held on the 10th of May, this meeting.
Through the Mayor, I need to look at the dates of when the minutes were written, but it may not have made the agenda. So the agenda is prepared before the meeting, but I can check. So it would have only been 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the meeting. So I need to check on that, but we aim to get them as soon as possible to the next meeting.
Yeah, because the minutes are not very long. I mean, the meeting was only 10 minutes long. So, you know, so why it didn't get to May, I don't know.
So, sorry, through the Mayor, just noting that this meeting was held the day before the agenda items were due.
Okay, because my understanding is that I was at a facilities meeting for the high school only a couple of weeks ago, and the conversion of this storeroom to the classroom is, I think, indeed a done deal. Just waiting for something from the architect or something like that is going ahead.
Are there any further comments in relation to the recommendation? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mann.
Just to close, just in terms of Councillor Robertson's just questions, that was just a very short update and quick discussion, and it, as you're aware, it was a particularly long meeting that day, so that was something that was.
If there's no further discussion, I'll put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 13.2. The Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee meetings, there are 2 recommendations there, and I'll do that on block. The second recommendation relates to the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority Board raising discussion matters regarding customer service and responding to a complaint. I think there's been a number of complaints. I think both Councillor Kemp, myself, and somebody who went to the committee have talked about damage to their bins by the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority and wanting replacement bins if they've been damaged by their trucks. So I think that's in relation to that. Can I have a mover for those 2 motions on block? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And a seconder, Councillor Kemp. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Councillor Littley?
Yeah, just to note that I also got the same correspondence from the same person and referred it on as well. So, yeah, it was a bit, the correspondence I got was a bit odd though, but I had referred it on, so I'd support this going there and having a discussion.
Yep, thank you. In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? Southern Community Transport Scheme Advisory Minutes of 15th of June. The recommendation is to receive and note them. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And a seconder, Councillor Hales. Do either of you want to speak to them? Councillor Henderson?
Yes, if I just make a comment about something that isn't any other business in the minutes of that meeting. Councillors may have seen that there was a bequest mentioned there from a lady called Judith Page, and it was expressed by the members of the committee, the volunteer drivers, that if possible, they would like to see some of that funding spent towards extending the shed or garaging for the vehicles. They feel it's a liability having those vehicles sitting out overnight, and also so from a security point of view, but also from a safety point of view, when they get in those vehicles very early in the morning, they're fogged up and they feel it's unsafe to drive those vehicles at the early hours they do, especially in the winter months. So there's a general statement there for staff to investigate how the funds could be used, but I just wanted to extend that information further as to how the committee felt that funding could be used.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just carrying on from Councillor Henderson's point of view, and some of the Scots people have spoken to me as well. It's interesting, we did have a meeting, I did have a meeting with Councillor Charles and the manager of Scots going back a couple of years ago about the sheds out the back here, you know, where they house some of the vehicles, but not all. And it was because it's council's land, it's council's sheds, there was going to be a support for building additional sheds or making them larger. I'm just wondering whether that's a possibility that council could take on board to review the storage of the Scots vehicles and to look at some type of solution for that. Now, whether that's for 22-23, but at least I think we should be looking at that time. Now, I can move a motion later on for that to happen, to include that as a strategy. To look at the Scots program and to look at how we can support those vehicles we do fund. They are funded by Rotary clubs, and we don't want them to seem deteriorated beyond their time.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The City Activation and Strategic Planning Advisory Meetings, committee minutes. I'll do those recommendations separately. The first one, that council receive and note the minutes. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do either of you want to speak to receiving and noting the minutes? Does anyone want to speak to receiving and noting the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. The second recommendation is that council proceed with the development for Henley Street car park proposal and that it be prepared and lodged through the Plan SA portal. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, thank you. And seconded by? Councillor Schofield, thank you. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Yes, I have a question of Mr. Pat House, Director Pat House, that a part of this proposal, we have to do a traffic management report. Is that correct? Is that being completed, you know, to go with the proposal, or we're still waiting? Because there's no timelines on this recommendation when the development application will go and be submitted.
Through the Mayor, that was the recommendation that came from the CASPAC meeting itself, from the meeting members, not from staff. The budget that I've allocated to the project but does include the preparation of a traffic management study. I wouldn't expect that wouldn't start until early in the new financial year. But all that body of work still needs to be done before a development application can be lodged, though.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to support this recommendation. I just don't think we're ready yet in the context of the whole Henley Street car park proposal, because I think there's some other areas that haven't been looked at yet, and I'm just wondering when that will come. And I'll just prepare that. I've got a motion without notice later on, which will address some of these issues. I'll leave it for then. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For Director Pat House as well. Going out to the excuse me, the development application soonest, I guess. How long do these development applications remain valid? Presumably it is approved. How long does the approval last on those?
The approval for a planning consent through the Mayor is 2 years. Once you've got your planning consent, you have 2 years to then obtain your full development approval, which would include the building certification, unless there's requests for extensions of time, which happen fairly frequently with large type developments.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any, Councillor Glasbrook?
Yes, no, I certainly won't be supporting this for 2 reasons. The first one is Councillor just voted on this a short time ago and it was lost. I'm disappointed it's back already. It seems to be someone's agenda. I don't think it's the community's agenda. You know, we had agreed to span some of these things out, and now here it is being brought forward again. The second reason is, you know, the council have come up with a set of plans which, you know, will look very nice, but there's in my opinion, a very, very high chance that they will change considerably. I'm still hoping that one day we'll get a partner to help us with the cost of this, because this is going to be a significant cost for our community and very unlikely to receive any grant funding. And if that happens, it'll look totally different to what it does now, because they'll have specific requirements that they wish to fulfil. And of course, the council wishes to fulfil their need for parking in the future. So, yeah, I'm not at all in favour of it. It's being pushed forward. And as Councillor Kemp said, I don't think we're quite ready yet, so I won't be voting for it.
Are there any further comments in relation to recommendation 2? Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate? No. In that case, I'll put recommendation 2 to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? I will make the casting vote. Listening to the arguments for and against this project, And I know that we are putting lots of projects on hold and pushing them back. I think, as Director Patthouse said, that by putting the development application for planning consent in is just the first stage. That will also, I remember during the workshop, if that's done, because this is a big project, we will know what the issues are in relation to what we can and can't do at that site. And the planning consent application will provide us with that information. So I would say I will vote for this. So we go ahead. It'll provide us with lots of information. 2 years plus before we actually have to do or need to do any further work. As Director Patthouse said, we can apply for an extension, so it doesn't mean to say that we have to do the work straight away. We can still go out for partnership after we have got the planning consent to see if there are any partners that want to go with us and have input into a more detailed design. So it doesn't prevent us from doing that, but it is actually getting moving with a project that we've been talking about for a very long time. And so I'm going to vote for this and carried on the casting vote of the chair.
I'd like to call for a decision, please.
Sure. All those in favour, please stand. So that's myself, Councillor Mann, Councillor Litterly, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. And against, Councillor Hales, Councillor Glasbrook, Councillor Kemp and Councillor Robertson. Thank you. The next item is 13.5, the CEO Performance Review Committee meeting, minutes of the 15th of June. I'll do that recommendation en bloc. Council receive and note the minutes and Council endorse the reviewed CEO Performance Review Committee terms of reference. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconded Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I won't be supporting this, mainly along the terms of reference. I was doing some research on this, and I know in terms of reference it talks about the CEO has to be present during the annual review under the Act. That's not an issue, but we do have a quarterly review of the CEO's performance, and there's no requirement for her to be at the review by the internal committee or Section 41 committee, which I find unusual that the committee would hold a meeting without the CEO being present to discuss her KPIs. But I believe in her contract, and I failed to find this information, that's why I'm not supporting it, because I think that under her contract it may make a statement there that she needs to be in attendance of the quarterly review of the CEO's Performance Committee. But until I find that information, I can't support the current recommendations as they stand.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Just for information for the rest of the council, there was legal advice sought in relation to that, and the legal advice highlighted that she does need to be present for the yearly performance review that's undertaken, but for the quarterly review, the legal advice was that she does not need to be in attendance.
Point of order. I can remember that legal advice, and I spoke about the annual review under the Act, 102A of the Act. Didn't say anything about her quarterly review meetings in the legal advice, from what I read. So that's why I called a point of order, Mayor Jenkins. You're making a statement which is, not quite correct, I believe, from my position of what the legal advice said.
Yeah, can you clarify that, please? I don't accept your point of order, but I'll get clarification.
Through the Mayor, the legal advice did talk about the contract of the CEO in line with the legal obligations in the Act for CEO performance review, and it did say that as the CEO is not contractually required to attend more than the annual one, it's not lawful to put that in the terms of reference because it's in contradiction to the contract. You're absolutely able to change that in a review of the CEO's contract, but of course the CEO always tries to attend when she's able to as well.
I have a question, please, of the acting CEO, Rokitansky. From my memory recall, I never read that legal part that was given. We were only given one section of the legal report to the committee from my memory. So I'm just going on my memory, and I can't remember reading that section about the contract. I'll stand corrected when I'll go and review the my agenda item.
Happy to re-forward the advice. It was contained, the whole legal advice as provided in the email to you.
Thank you. Councillor Glasbrook.
I'll just continue on that same topic if I could with a question. Can you please tell us what the clause states in relation to the CEO attending? Because that wasn't included.
Can I, through the chair, just clarify, you're saying what the clause in the revised terms of reference?
No, the legal advice clearly stated that there was a clause in the CEO's employment contract which obliged her to, I think, attend these committee meetings. But then the legal advice goes on to say that under 102 of the Act and blah, blah, blah. So I'd like to know what's actually in the CEO's contract of employment.
I'll just see if I can find that for you. Don't have the CEO's contract in front of me, but I can read a small statement from the legal advice that would clarify the point that you're asking clarification on. In respect to the CEO, her contract of employment contains a clause requiring her to be present and to participate in the performance review process that is undertaken by the committee. However, save for this contractual obligation, there is no other requirement of a statutory nature for the CEO to be in attendance at every committee meeting. So it's only referring to that annual one. Nor is there an obligation for a delegate to attend.
Obviously, I disagree with that. I don't believe that it says that. It says that she has an obligation under her employment contract to attend those meetings. So a bit like Councillor Campbell, I'd need to see that, exactly what that wording is. But anyway, and I'll just vote against it, that's fine. There's one thing we need to be very cautious about with these policies, in particular this one. This has got nothing to do with Victoria McCurdy at all. This is a review of a policy for a CEO, any CEO, the future CEO. And yes, Victoria has attended all of the meetings, which I'm very grateful that she has done. And personally, I think it would be a total waste of time to have a review process without the person being there. But anyway, so I just wanted to make that point. This is not about Victoria McCurdy at all. This is about the position, the CEO position of this council. Now, can I ask a question? If this council was to have a review, a staff review, would that staff member be expected to attend that review?
To clarify, it is staff, as same as the CEO, have an annual performance review. That's the one required by the Act. Like any other staff member, you wouldn't expect that there'd only be that one opportunity annually to discuss performance. And that's what those other committee meetings are about. And the legal advice did talk about the fact that there might actually be circumstances where the committee wishes to meet exclusive without the CEO there, and that would be entirely appropriate to do that. But generally speaking, for every staff member, it's an annual performance review, and the Act only requires an annual performance review for the CEO.
And they would be there though, obviously, the staff member would be there. Yes.
As would Victoria, or
Yes.
as would the CEO at the annual one. So that's the only one that the legislation prescribes that there's a minimum requirement for. You can have as many meetings as a committee that you would like. Likewise, with any other staff member, there can be there could be monthly meetings, and it would generally be with the staff member there, but that annual one is the requirement.
Well, you know, I still disagree. I mean, as a council, as a group of elected members, there is one employee of this organisation that the council has got any input with at all, and that is the CEO. We can't delegate or instruct any employee except for the CEO. So I personally feel that these meetings are a great opportunity to catch up with the CEO of the time, discuss what's going on in council, discuss if the CEO's got any problems or issues, or discuss all sorts of things, not necessarily and specifically the CEO's performance and the CEO's KPIs and you know, that annual review that you're talking about. There's lots of things that could be discussed with the CEO. And I think it's important that council, through a committee of this type, has that opportunity. And I certainly think that you can't have that opportunity if the CEO is not present. So it really just makes a mockery of the whole thing. So I'm certainly not in favour of this. I would like to see that clause because I believe that, you know, this could have been catered for within that clause. And if we need to change something, well, we should change it because, you know, well, I'll put it out there. I'm certainly not interested in being on that committee if the CEO is not going to be there, because I've got more important things to do than waste my time at a committee meeting when the person that we're reviewing is not even there. So I'll be resigning, I can tell you now. And yeah, do as you may.
Have you got a question, Councillor Kemp?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Again, not clearly understanding the contractual arrangements about the CEO's attendance. If the CEO's contract statement states that she has to be in attendance, and if she doesn't attend because it's not in the terms of reference, the question is, would she be breach of her contract? Contractual arrangements has got nothing to do with the terms of reference, how the committee operates, but if the terms of contract says she's there, then if she doesn't turn up unless she's sick or another point, or, you know, things like that. So I'm just wondering, because I don't want to set the CEO up, whoever it is, that, you know, will go down this path and then all of a sudden there's a complaint.
Through the chair, I'd have to get legal advice on that, but it's not the situation we're currently in. I imagine that you would defer the meeting until the CEO was able to attend if it was indeed a contractual requirement.
So you'll be closed. No one else wants to let you close the debate?
I just wanted to point out that the legal advice referred to a full copy of the confidential legal advice was provided to elected members as an attachment and a separate cover for this meeting.
Thank you. That closes debate. I now put the recommendation, which is recommendation 1 and 2, to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Division, please.
All those in favour? Councillor 4 is Councillor Hales, Councillor Mann, Councillor Littley, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. Against is Councillor Glasbrook, Councillor Kemp and Councillor Robertson. The motion is carried. We now move to the subsidiary and representative reports, and the recommendation is that Council receive and note the reports for June 2022. Someone would like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Hales. And seconding that? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 172, under the Murray-Darling Association discussion points, there included the possibility of flooding that's particularly in the Lower Murray, were discussed due to the high rainfall. The meeting was told that states and the SES are monitoring and planning pre-releases to prevent this. I just, as a point of information, I just had a recent discussion with someone who was around during the 1956 floods. And let's bear in mind that this Murray-Darling Association report is of a meeting held in May. That all of the conditions for a major flood in the Murray are present. All of the locks are full. All of the lakes, including Malindi Lakes, is full. There is the Bureau of Meteorology has forecast significantly higher rainfall, winter rainfall, for pretty much the whole of the Murray-Darling Basin headwaters and area. And we've had record snowfall. That's water being stored above ground in the snow areas, and that's just at the beginning of the season. With this scenario, and pre-releases have already started, but with this situation on hand, the continued significant extra rainfall during winter could well result in really major flooding in the Murray Basin this year. So it was just a point of information.
Councillor Littley.
I have a point of information, and that is that I think we'll be okay here.
Are there any further discussion in relation to receiving and noting those minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Authority. I'll do that recommendation en bloc. There's two recommendations there. First, receiving and noting, and the second one approving the draft business plan, which is provided under a separate cover. Do I have someone to move that way? Councillor Schofield? Oh, sorry, Councillor Littley. Councillor Schofield seconding that. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Littley? Councillor Schofield? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre Authority, third budget review, and I'll do that recommendation en bloc. Receiving and noting, approving the budget review with an operating deficit of $691,151 and endorsing an increase of $67,900 to facilitate the additional council contribution required. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson? And seconded by Councillor Hales. Do either of you want to speak to that? Or does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, appreciate the issues outlined on page 210. with respect to the economics of running the centre. They're battling against some major problems in relation to getting people back into the pool and to the gym, etc. Appreciate that. The question for the question there is they have adjusted some of the costings, but is there any attention being given to getting a marketing plan, a promotion plan, or program, I should say, going to get people back into the centre?
Perhaps Councillor Kemp might be able to answer that as he's our representative on the board.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson, for that in-depth question. It's an interesting situation the authority finds itself in. Yes, COVID has raged quite well and it's certainly affected attendance. And of course, people are still wondering when it's still safe to come back at this stage as COVID still is around. Our energy costs are high, and also that the other functions of the plant room costs are increasing as well. I guess to give you a summary overall, the YMCA does have a marketing plan to how to recruit, but that's their role to go down that path to look at how to encourage new products and getting people back into the pool and new members as well. The authority overall has a number of plans that are being developed and put into place, but one of the issues that we faced, again, I have mentioned this before, changing of executive officers and board members has been horrific over the last couple of years, and of course you lose a lot of traction until people come up to speed again as to where the authority is and what's required. We did go out to look at our energy costs for an energy audit because we're all 100% electricity in the facility, heating of the pools. So what came back wasn't we would deem to be a qualified energy audit as like an independent group. It was a supplier who could provide a renewable energy solution to the centre, which was really was quite extraordinary. What the board is now looking at is searching out for an independent consultant who actually deals with this type of finding a solution business case, because if we have to go out and look for some type of massive investment, we need to bring it back to council. So in order to do that, we've got to have a strong business case as to why the authority has to go down that pathway, which will be out of borrowings, not so much asking councils for additional funds, but to look at under our charter that we have the authority to borrow funds and how we're going to pay for it. So at the moment, we've just gone through a selection process for a new executive officer, and I believe there's a selection process for a new board member. So again, it's that traction of getting the people there and to carry it on and to do that. So that's part of the reason why the costs are blowing out down that area. But certainly once we get our executive officer back on board and up to speed and new board member, I think we'll get more traction, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a solution to our costs to bring down, you know, the impact on the two councils.
Supplementary question, if I might, Mayor. Just an update of how the solar installation is going at the centre.
Oh,
Again, Councillor Kemp, you may be able to answer that one.
Yes, look, yeah, again, that was the what happened last year. We went out to believing getting an energy audit done, the cost of solar systems to reduce the cost of energy coming in of the place. We're looking at looking at different solutions as to what they can happen, and that's why we need to engage a consultant who deals with alternative solutions and find the best solution to reduce the cost of our energy needs, and that won't be done until later this year.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion in relation to those two recommendations? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We come to National Waste Authority third budget review, and again, I'll do those recommendations en bloc. Would someone like to move them en bloc? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. And seconded by Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to them? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Looking at page 220 and also 226, but under the financial reporting that here, there's no separate quantification of the expenditure to date on the asbestos amelioration project, and particularly on page 226, the notice there, which is this is the one for Alexandrina, the same pretty much as what's in for Victor Harbour in the sense of the layout, different figures of course, but you'll see in here that the ACM project, which is the amelioration of the asbestos program, that the year-to-date actual budget 21-22 and end of year forecast for that project are all showing zero. I think it's really important from the point of view of not only making sure this project comes in on budget or under budget, but also from the point of view of any future liabilities that we might get out of this, that there's a means of tracking how much expenditure is going on this project. And it's disappointing, I think, that the authority isn't providing that information, either Monte Grosso, the project as an amelioration project in total, or in the parts of the statements where it breaks it down into a council basis, that there's zero information in that as well. And I think this needs to be passed on to the authority, that we have a very keen interest in tracking the progress and also the expenditure on this asbestos amelioration project.
Thank you. I'm sure the director involved will pass that on. Thank you, Kathy. Is there any further discussion in relation to those recommendations? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The mayoral report for June, the recommendation. Councillor receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Seconded by Councillor Robertson. Do either of you or anyone have any questions? No. All those in favour? Those against? The elected member reports, 15.2. Councillor receive and note the elected member reports. Someone move that way. Thank you, Councillor Mann, and second to Councillor Robertson. Does anybody have any questions in relation to the elected member reports? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. There are no matters of urgency. The questions on notice in relation to the City of Harbour volunteers from Councillor Kemp, your answers are there in the report. We now go to 18, questions without notice. I have some questions without notice. that I'll start with, and then I'll ask if anybody else has any questions without notice. My questions. So I read on the ABC News that the state government has cancelled their plans for a mountain bike trail in the Hindmarsh Tears National Park. This, I believe, was going to be multi-level trails ranging in difficulty to attract mountain bikers to our region over the winter months, boosting our winter tourism to the region and complementing the mountain bike trails planned by the City of Victor Harbor. And we'd put a lot of work into in conjunction with state government's mountain bike trails. The questions I've got is, did council staff have any communication with the state government or DEW prior to their decision to cease their plans for mountain bike trails in the new Hindmarsh Tears National Park? And if so, when? Will they be continuing with the proposed walking trails and car park in the park? What impact, the third one, what impact will this have on the City of Victor Harbour's plans for mountain bike trails that link into the trails previously proposed for Hindmarsh Tears National Park? And what is the economic cost of this to the City of Victor Harbour? Can we please write to DEW, the Minister for Water and Environment, and our own local MP outlining our concerns and the social and economic costs that this will have on our town and on our region? The other question is, I understand DEW have completed the Granite Island Master Plan. Have the staff had any discussion with DEW as to when this will be released to the public? Given DEW's cancellation of the mountain bike path in Hindmarsh Valley National Park, are they still going to be releasing the Granite Island Master Plan? And are they going ahead with any of the projects proposed in the Master Plan? Our community is becoming increasingly frustrated with the demise of Granite Island, the lack of a functioning cafe and restaurant on the island, and the lack of a vision for the island. Now that we have a safe and permanent causeway that can operate in 24/7, it is timely to address their master plan. Please do so. So I'll pass those questions to our acting CEO to follow up. Well, perhaps with, they're probably your responsibility, aren't they? Yep, sorry, I'll pass them to Kathy Hayter to follow up with that. Councillor Robertson?
Yes, question, Mayor. Just trying to remember what you said. Did the ABC program say that the mountain bikes were cancelled, or that is cut off, or were they postponed?
Stopped, cancelled, cut off, no more.
Okay.
Councillor Lidley, you have questions without notice?
Oh, I was just going to add some clarification to that. Is both the Fox Creek Mountain Bike Trail program and was the main top point that was mentioned, with a more general Hindmarsh Valley also scrapped. But obviously the Fox Creek was more advanced in its planning and its positioning. So that's what it had said this afternoon. And a release by David Spears as well to it.
The concern that I've got is I'm not sure what discussions they've had with council and consulting council, and it does have a direct impact on council's mountain bike trails, and I'm not sure whether or not the cancellation of the mountain bike trails in Hindmarsh Valley National Park or Hindmarsh Tears National Park, whether they're going to continue with the walking trails that were planned there as well, and they'd already started doing construction of the car park and some of the other walking trails. So we, as mayor, I'm completely out of the loop, which makes it embarrassing if the media ask any questions in relation to the community and what the community thinks about this, if I don't have any idea what has been planned. Are there any other questions without notice? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, Mayor, I have one, and it's kind of additional material for your question. Some months ago, getting on for almost 6 months ago, we asked the Department of Environment if they had a conservation program to either stabilise or grow the population of little penguins on Granite Island. So far, we have had nothing, I believe, back from the Department of environment. And at the very least, we should have known what such a program was going to be before they put out a master plan for Granite Island. And if indeed we've not received any response to that request, then can we urgently ask the CEO to write to the Department of Environment to again remind them that this is what not only that they promised they would provide, but actually it was going to be provided, I think, in early February. So that's getting on for 6 months. And we need to know, given the death rates that we've been seeing this year, that as to what is their plan for the promotion of the population of little penguins on Granite Island.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions without notice? We move now on to motions on notice. Are there any motions on notice? There are none. Motions without notice. Councillor Kemp.
Yes, I do have one. I'll bring it up to be printed up as I read it. I move to temporarily cease any further production or work by council on the following projects: Arts and Culture Centre, Burial Sports Precinct and McKinley Street Multi-Deck Car Park, where a prudential report is completed for each project, tabled at the appropriate council meeting when completed.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Robertson. Councillor Kemp, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. And starting off with the commentary, with questions from and the answer from the Mayor about major projects must have prudential reports. I'll go through my commentary to explain why we need one. The estimated capital expenditure to implement these projects are the Arts and Culture Centre, 20 million, Fleurieu Sports Precinct, 18 million, McKinley Street Multi-Deck Car Park, 12 million. This is $50 million of capital investment by this community and City of Victor Harbor over the next few years. The operating cost for each project has not been identified yet, so we don't know what they are and the impact it will have. The Council to date has already, with some projects, undertaken the following: a feasibility study, a business case, concept designs, development applications, documentation. Budgets for building construction applications are looking at. The last steps will be a development approval. Once approval is granted, then construction can commence. Cost to date, depending on which project you want to review, is potentially up to $900,000 plus. These costs are a part of the total cost of each project. A prudential report is covered under Section 48 of the Local Government Act 1999. A prudential report is a formal report with specific requirements. A council must develop and maintain prudential management policies, practices and procedures for the assessment of projects and ensure that council acts with due care, diligence and foresight, and identifies and manages risks associated with a project and makes informed decisions and is accountable for the use of council and other public resources. Without limiting Section AA1, which I just read out, a council must obtain and consider a report that addresses the prudential issues set out in Section 2 before the council engages in any project, whether it's commercial or otherwise, and including through a subsidiary or participation in a joint venture, trust, partnership or similar body. The Prudential report will include, but not limited to, in relation to the proposed project, analysis of the need or demand, identification and quantification of the expected financial and other benefits, identification and quantification of the likely whole-of-life financial and other costs, including staffing and project management costs, assessment of the associated financial risk, including the financial risk of not proceeding or delaying the proposed project, and consideration of the ways they can be managed and or mitigated, an evaluation that weighs up all the factors above. For any project that falls into an area where there is an extreme to high financial risk, using the risk management framework, included our project feasibility study to provide a high-level consideration of the expected cost and revenues over the life of the project. Using discounted cash flow analysis, one important aspect that will be considered in such a study is the reliability of these costs and revenues within these calculations, particularly if revenues are dependent on future market conditions. A Prudential report for the decision makers, which are us, must be presented to us before we embark on any amount of expenditure. We've already spent, in some cases, nearly $1 million, no Prudential report. We've had some business cases and various things like that. So for us to continue under the, and not be in breach or potentially be in breach of the Act, we should have a Prudential report before we can decide whether we really go ahead with these projects because of what an indication. Now, I'm not saying we don't go ahead with the projects, it's just saying that they're stalled until we get Prudential reports to ensure that we really understand what we're committing community funds to and how much the on-cost will be and how much it will impact on the community. That's what the reports are about. They did it for the Aquatic Centre in 2013, and of course they didn't build it until 2017, so 4 years later, sort of a little bit outdated, but I think we need to get this reports up in front of the chamber so we really understand exactly what we're making decisions on. I'm not against these centres, these projects, but we need to be due diligence about how we make a decision. I think we owe that to our community before we commit a certain amount of funds and impact on the community. If the report comes back and says it's a great thing to go ahead with, or it may come back and say don't go ahead with it because of the risks, then we are informed. At the moment, we are not. We've done it in a piecemeal fashion with bits and pieces here. We're going down development applications, etc. Building construction, 900,000 for the sporting precinct in the next financial year. We haven't done our Prudential reports to actually understand exactly what we're getting into for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Robertson, you seconded the motion. Do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's a very sensible requirement that we have to meet. The three projects that Councillor Kemp is are coming up in this decade's long-term financial plan. I guess the first one, cab off the rank, will be the sporting precinct one, because we then have the Arts and Culture Centre coming 25, 26, something like that. And then the car park, we don't know when, but probably past that date. So it's a requirement that we ought to do it. It's probably a piece of discipline that would help us a lot. Normally, one of the issues that we don't pay much attention to with these three projects, we've hardly delved into it, and that is perhaps with the Arts and Culture Centre a little bit, but the operating costs. It's one thing to fork out millions of dollars when we get a matching grant, and then we book up the capital costs. But of course, in a lot of these sorts of projects, and particularly the Arts and Culture Centre and the regional sports and recreation facilities, the operating costs are immense, probably almost as much, if not more, than the capital costs spread out over a 10 or 15 year period. And we haven't paid much attention to that at all. We don't pay much attention. We get fixated on the capital costs. So to me, it makes sense. It's part of the law, part of our requirements, I should say. And it makes a lot of sense. So that's why I'd be supporting it.
Thank you. We've got a motion on the table now. There's
Can
a
I
lot-
speak to the motion? Other people going to speak to the motion?
Not necessarily. Can you just hold while it's, I think, a really important, and it's a big motion that contains lots of information that we don't have at the moment. And looking at our meeting procedures, when we look at motions and item 6 of motions, the presiding member may refuse to accept a motion without notice if, after taking into account the guiding principles, he or she considers that the motion should be dealt with by way of a written notice on motion. So to maintain an open and transparent approach to governance, motions without notice should be restricted to matters closely related to agenda items, housekeeping issues, or matters of urgency. When, in the opinion of the presiding member, the motion will require action involving the expenditure of an unbudgeted resource, a motion on notice may be requested. So if I go back to the guiding principles of council, because I do think that what you are talking about is very important, Councillor Kemp. The guiding principle should be applied with respect to the procedures to be observed at a meeting. The guiding principle D says that procedures should be sufficiently certain to give the community and decision makers confidence in the deliberations undertaken at this meeting. I'm of the opinion that the motion without notice that you've put forward is a really important thing for us to consider. And there's a number of things in there, number of points you've made that I agree with. However, I'm also cognizant that members don't have the prudential management policy in front of them. We haven't got a report about what this would involve, the cost of doing this, the timeline of doing this, and a number of other issues that would help the chamber make a good decision in relation to this. And so what I would say is that I'm going to refuse this as a motion without notice, but I'd encourage you to bring it back as a motion on notice so that we can get some further information and have a proper informed debate about it, because I do think that it is an important thing to debate and to look at. So I won't ask for any further commentary on this, but I will suggest we bring it back as a motion on notice. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins, and I will bring it back for the July meeting. It's just
Fantastic.
I ran out of the time frame to submit it on notice, so that's not a problem.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you very much. Are there any other motions without notice? No. In that case, then we move down to the confidential items. It is 9:20, and at 9:30, I will ask for a vote. Councillor Mann. The first item, 21.1, the waiver of fees in relation to Victor Harbour Cemetery. The first recommendation is going into confidence, and the reason that this is going into confidence is that the personal affairs, or the name of the person whose plot may be being moved, is in the recommendation. So the first recommendation is that the meeting move into confidence. Do I have someone to move that way? Councillor Henderson, thank you. And much. Any discussion on that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you.